The Force binds all things across the galaxy, connecting every living being in an invisible web of energy that flows through planets, stars, and the vast emptiness between worlds. For millennia, the Jedi believed they understood its will, that it guided the galaxy toward balance and light. But what happens when beings from beyond the stars arrive? Wielding powers the Force cannot touch, cannot predict, cannot bind. What happens when heroes from another universe crash into a galaxy where tyranny wears the mask of order and rebellion hides in shadows? The Force would soon learn that some powers transcend even its ancient reach. Above the outer rim world of Lothal, space itself screamed. The dimensional rift tore through reality like a wound in the fabric of existence. Lightning arcing across the void in colors that shouldn't exist. Crimson bleeding into violet. Gold twisted with impossible black. Imperial sensors on the planet below shrieked warnings as the anomaly expanded, distorting gravity wells and sending nearby TIE fighter patrols spiraling out of control. In the command center of Lothal's Imperial garrison, officers stared at readouts that made no sense, showing energy signatures that violated every known law of physics. Then, through the tear, they came. The Javelin 7, a sleek watchtower transport shuttle, erupted from the rift, trailing fire and sparking with dimensional discharge. Inside, 7 of Earth's mightiest heroes fought to regain control as alien stars blazed through the viewport and unfamiliar constellations wheeled overhead. Superman gripped his seat restraints, feeling something fundamentally wrong with the sunlight streaming through the hull. Weaker, different, like drinking water that almost but not quite quenched thirst. Batman's gloved hands flew across emergency controls that had switched to an unknown language, rerouting power from failing systems. Wonder Woman braced herself in the doorway to the cockpit, her warrior instincts screaming danger even as her eyes took in the impossible vista of a galaxy not their own. "Cyborg, tell me you can land this thing," Superman shouted over the shriek of atmosphere entry as Lothal's ochre surface rushed up to meet them. Trying. Victor Stone's mechanical eye blazed with light as he interfaced directly with the shuttle's systems, his mother box technology struggling to interpret alien computational architecture. The dimensional transit fried half our systems, and something about this place is interfering with my connection. It's like there's static in the air, some kind of energy field I've never encountered. The Javelin 7 hit Lothal's atmosphere like a meteor, air screaming across its hull as it carved a burning trail across the sky. In Capital City, citizens stopped in the streets to stare upward at the fireball. Stormtroopers raised their weapons reflexively, training tracking the descending craft. In the Imperial garrison's command center, an officer's hand hovered over the alert klaxon that would summon all forces. "All hands, brace for impact." Cyborg's warning came a half-second before the Javelin plowed into the grasslands 5 kilometers outside Capital City. The crash sent up a plume of dirt and smoke, visible for dozens of kilometers. The shuttle carving a trench 50 meters long, before grinding to a shuddering halt against an outcropping of stone. For a moment, silence. Lothal's twin moons hung in a sky transitioning from day to dusk, and the wind whispered through the tall grass. Then the shuttle's emergency hatch exploded outward. Superman emerged first, floating a meter above the ground, his cape settling around his shoulders as his eyes swept the horizon with X-ray and telescopic vision. Even weakened by this dimension's strange sunlight, he was still the most powerful being on the planet. Behind him, Wonder Woman leapt gracefully from the wreckage, her hand instinctively moving to the sword at her hip. Batman followed, already analyzing their surroundings with the detector built into his cowl, while the Flash vibrated out of the shuttle in a blur of crimson lightning that left after images. Everyone accounted for? Superman's voice carried the weight of command, even here, galaxies from home. Present, Martian Manhunter replied, his form phasing through the hull rather than using the hatch. His red eyes narrowed as he attempted to reach out telepathically, then winced. There are minds here, but they feel different, alien in ways I've never experienced. And there's something else, a field of energy that resists my telepathy. Green Lantern, Hal Jordan, hovered nearby, his power ring blazing with emerald light, though the glow seemed dimmer than normal. Rings reading massive population centers across this planet and detecting some kind of orbital platforms. Big ones. This isn't an uninhabited world. People. Aquaman emerged last, his tattooed arms crossed as he surveyed the grasslands with obvious distaste. No oceans nearby. Wonderful. Anyone want to explain how we went from fighting Darkseid's invasion to crash landing on an alien world that's definitely not Earth? The boom tube, Batman said flatly, his eyes still on his scanner readouts. When Cyborg tried to shut down Darkseid's portal, something interfered with the mother box technology. We didn't teleport across Earth. We teleported across dimensional barriers. So we're not in Kansas anymore, Flash quipped, though his humor sounded forced. Even vibrating at super speed, Barry Allen felt wrong here, disconnected from the Speed Force in ways that terrified him. He could still run faster than sound, but the infinite well of temporal energy he normally accessed felt like trying to drink through a clogged straw. Superman was about to respond when his super hearing picked up the sound, the distinctive whine of engines approaching fast and low. Multiple craft, military formations, weapon systems primed. We've got incoming. Everyone, defensive positions, but no aggression. We don't know the situation here yet. The TIE fighters screamed over the horizon in a perfect V formation, their twin-ion engines producing that characteristic scream that had become synonymous with Imperial might. To the Justice League, they looked almost comically primitive. Boxy, ungainly craft that seemed held together by exposed panels and oversized engines. But the energy signatures emanating from their weapons were anything but primitive. Attention unidentified craft. A voice crackled over speakers mounted on the lead TIE fighter, spoken in a language that should have been incomprehensible, but somehow translated itself in each League member's mind. You have violated Imperial airspace and landed without authorization. Power down your weapons and prepare to be taken into custody by order of the Galactic Empire. Wonder Woman's hand tightened on her sword hilt. Empire? Galactic? Batman's jaw clenched behind his cowl. Of course. They'd escaped one tyrant only to land in the domain of another. Superman, what do you see? The Man of Steel's vision pierced the TIE fighters' hulls, seeing the pilots inside. Human, or near human, wearing white armor and helmets, their life signs anxious but determined. Weapons were armed but not yet targeting. A test, perhaps. They're scared but ready to fire. Single pilots, no co-pilots. Light armor on the craft themselves. One good hit would take them down. Then let's make sure there are no hits, Superman said, rising higher into the air with arms spread in the universal gesture of peace. We mean you no harm. There's been an accident. We're not from your world. We're travelers who arrived here by mistake. The TIE fighter formation didn't waver. If anything, the weapon systems grew hotter, energy building in the targeting arrays. Surrender immediately or you will be fired upon. This is your final warning. Flash sidled up next to Batman, speaking low and fast. So, what's the play here, boss? because I'm getting serious fascist vibes from these guys, and their very threatening flying trash cans. Before Batman could answer, Green Lantern's ring pulsed urgently. Guys, my ring just finished translating their data broadcasts. We've got a problem, a big problem. This Galactic Empire controls thousands of star systems across an entire galaxy. And according to these transmissions, Hal's face paled beneath his mask. They just destroyed an entire planet called Alderaan. 2 billion people gone as a demonstration of power. The temperature around Wonder Woman's sword began to rise, her divine anger manifesting as a heat shimmer in the air. They destroyed a world? An entire world of innocence? Superman's eyes began to glow red, heat vision building reflexively at the thought of such casual genocide. But Batman's hand shot out, gripping his shoulder. Clark, we don't know the full situation. We don't understand the politics here, the history. What led to 2 billion people, Bruce? Superman's voice was cold as the void between stars. What situation justifies that? The lead TIE fighter's weapons locked on. The pilot's voice carried an edge of panic now. Target is powering weapons. All units, open fire. Emerald energy lanced from Green Lantern's ring, forming a massive shield above the League as laser fire rained down from the TIE fighters. The bolts, superheated plasma, Batman's scanner identified, splashed harmlessly against Hal's construct. But each impact made the lantern wince. The ring was struggling here, burning through power faster than normal. Return fire is authorized, Superman barked. But his tone made clear the restrictions. Disable only. These pilots are following orders. They're not the enemy. Wonder Woman was already in motion, her lasso uncoiling like a golden serpent as she leaped 30 meters straight up. The indestructible rope wrapped around a TIE fighter's wing, and with a warrior's precision, she swung the craft into its wingman. Both ships spiraled toward the ground in controlled crashes that would bruise the pilots, but not kill them. Flash became a crimson blur, running up a column of air itself, vibrating his molecules fast enough to create a pressure differential, and punching through a TIE fighter's viewport to yank the pilot free before the craft could crash. Superman flew through the formation like a bullet, his fists striking engine assemblies with perfect precision. Each punch disabled a fighter without killing its occupant, sending them gliding toward emergency landings rather than death spirals. Martian Manhunter phased through cockpits, his telepathy finally finding purchase enough to send the pilots into brief unconsciousness, letting him guide their craft safely down with telekinesis. In 90 seconds, the engagement was over. 8 TIE fighters lay scattered across the grasslands, pilots alive but unconscious or disoriented. And the Justice League stood unharmed in the center of the wreckage. Well, Flash said, hands on his hips as he surveyed the damage. We just picked a fight with an empire that can destroy planets. Anyone else think we maybe should have led with diplomacy? Batman was already moving toward the nearest downed TIE fighter, his detective's mind cataloging every detail. We need information. Technology, language, history, politics, everything. Cyborg, can you interface with their systems? Victor Stone knelt beside an intact computer console, his mechanical components extending to make contact. His human eye widened as data flooded through his consciousness. Oh man, this is... Bruce, they're not kidding about the scale. This empire spans the entire galaxy. Trillions of citizens, thousands of member worlds, a central government on a planet called Coruscant. And there's this energy they keep referencing, something called the Force that... He stopped abruptly, his systems recoiling from something in the data. There are these enforcers, dark warriors called Sith, and their leader. Cyborg looked up at Superman, genuine fear in his eyes. They have someone called Darth Vader, the Emperor's right hand, and according to these reports, he can do things that shouldn't be possible. Move objects with his mind, see the future, kill with a thought. Magic, Wonder Woman said quietly, or something like it. We've faced such things before. Not like this, Martian Manhunter interjected, his voice troubled. I can feel it now, that energy field I mentioned. It's everywhere, in everything. Every living thing on this planet resonates with it. And somewhere out there, he pointed toward the sky, toward the orbital stations Green Lantern had detected. There are beings who burn with it like stars, powerful, ancient, dangerous. Superman's jaw set in that familiar expression of determination that had carried him through countless, impossible battles. Then we'll face them if we must. But first, we need allies. People who can tell us the truth about this empire and whether they're worthy of the power they wield. As if summoned by his words. A new sound echoed across the grasslands. The roar of a modified freighter coming in fast and low, its running lights dark, moving with the practiced ease of smugglers or rebels. The ship, a battered VCX-100 that had seen better decades, settled onto its landing gear 50 meters from the League's position. Its boarding ramp lowered with a hiss of hydraulics. A woman emerged first, green-skinned with leku, head tails draped over her shoulders, a blaster pistol holstered at her hip, and a pilot's confidence in her stride. She was flanked by a massive Lasat warrior carrying a bow rifle, a young human woman with short hair and armor bearing paint marks, and a protocol droid that looked perpetually anxious. Well, the green-skinned woman said, her accented basic carrying a mixture of wariness and hope as she surveyed 7 beings who just disabled an Imperial patrol without breaking a sweat. You're either the best thing that's happened to the rebellion in years, or you're about to make our lives very, very complicated. Batman stepped forward, his cape spreading behind him like wings of night. Who are you? Hera Syndulla, captain of the Ghost. And if you really did just arrive here by accident? Her eyes swept across Superman's impossible physique, Wonder Woman's divine bearing, the advanced technology covering the others. Then you've landed right in the middle of a war for the future of the entire galaxy. Superman and Hera's eyes met across the grasslands, and in that moment, both recognized something in the other. Hope, determination. The willingness to fight against impossible odds for what was right. The Justice League had arrived in the Star Wars galaxy. The Empire would never be the same. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. The Ghost's common room smelled of recycled air, calf that had been reheated one too many times, and the particular metallic tang that came from a ship held together by spare parts and stubbornness. The Justice League stood in a rough semicircle, too large and too powerful for the cramped space, while Hera Syndulla's crew watched them with expressions ranging from awe to suspicion. Outside the viewport, Lothal's grasslands stretched toward Capital City, where Imperial searchlights now swept the sky in systematic patterns, hunting for the beings who'd humiliated their patrol. So let me get this straight, said the young woman Hera had introduced as Sabine Wren, her Mandalorian armor catching the overhead lights. You're from another dimension entirely. You fight something called crime and injustice on your world. And you just happen to crash land on one of the most heavily occupied Imperial worlds in the Outer Rim. Her hand hadn't left her blaster. That's either the worst luck in the galaxy or the best cover story I've ever heard." Batman's eyes narrowed behind his cowl, his detective's instincts cataloging every detail of the crew. The Lasat, Zeb, he'd been called, was a warrior, his stance and scars marking him as experienced in close combat. Sabine was young but dangerous, her armor showing signs of personal modification and artistic expression that suggested a rebel spirit. The protocol droid, C-110P, Chopper, they called it, was erratic and aggressive for a service droid, its behavior patterns indicating significant personality development. And Hera herself. She carried herself like someone who'd been fighting a losing war for years but refused to surrender. "It's the truth," Superman said simply, his voice carrying that natural authority that made people want to believe him. "We were defending our world from an invasion when an accident pulled us here. We don't know how to get back. We don't fully understand your galaxy or its politics. But we saw your TIE fighters. We saw Imperial forces and..." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "We've dealt with empires before. Have you dealt with one that spans 1,000,000 worlds?" Hera's voice was sharp. "That commands armies numbering in the trillions? That has weapons capable of destroying entire planets?" She pulled out a small holoprojector, activating it with a gesture. The blue hologram that materialized showed a peaceful world of white cities and green continents, orbited by a moon. Then, a massive space station, a sphere of metal larger than some moons, appeared in frame, and a beam of impossible energy lanced out. The Justice League watched in silence as Alderaan died. The planet cracked like an egg, its surface erupting in chain reactions that consumed oceans and continents in seconds. Then it was simply gone, replaced by an expanding field of debris and the scattered atoms of 2 billion lives. "That happened 3 weeks ago," Hera said quietly, deactivating the projector. "The Death Star, the Empire's ultimate weapon. They destroyed Alderaan as a demonstration to terrify systems into submission. It worked. Dozens of worlds have already capitulated, surrendered their sovereignty rather than risk being next." Wonder Woman's hands clenched into fists, her warrior's heart raging at such cowardice, such evil. "And you fight against this empire? With what? That ship and 4 people?" "6, Zeb rumbled, his accent thick with pride and pain. "Our crew has 6. Our pilot Kanan and our youngest, Ezra, are on a supply run to Garel. And we're not alone. We're part of something bigger. Phoenix Squadron. The Rebellion." "Rebellion," Flash repeated, and there was uncertainty in his voice. Barry Allen had fought alongside governments, worked with the law. The word rebellion conjured images of chaos, of well-meaning insurgents whose methods sometimes hurt innocents. You're fighting a guerrilla war. Sabotage, hit-and-run attacks, terrorism. "Freedom fighting," Sabine cut in, her voice ice. "The Empire murdered my people. They stripped Mandalore of its independence, its resources, its culture. They've enslaved entire species, strip-mined worlds into lifeless rocks. They've hunted the Jedi, peacekeepers who protected the galaxy for thousands of years, to near extinction." Her hand finally left her blaster, but only to point accusingly at the League. "So don't you dare stand there in your fancy armor and judge us for fighting back however we can." An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Batman broke it, his voice analytical, clinical. "The Jedi." Cyborg found references to them in the Imperial database. They could manipulate this force energy. They were the old government's enforcers before the Empire rose. He turned to Hera. "What happened to them?" Hera's expression darkened. "Order 66, 19 years ago, at the end of the Clone Wars, the Clone Army, soldiers created to fight for the Republic, turned on the Jedi without warning. Thousands of Jedi were murdered in a single day. The few who survived went into hiding, hunted by the Empire's Inquisitors and by Darth Vader himself. This Vader, Superman said, his mind already cataloging threats and analyzing how to counter them. Cyborg said he can move objects with his mind, see the future. How powerful is he? Powerful enough that entire Imperial fleets obey him without question, Hera replied. Powerful enough that he's personally responsible for hunting down dozens of surviving Jedi. Powerful enough that the mere mention of his name makes planetary governors surrender without firing a shot. She met Superman's eyes. I've never seen him in person, but I've seen the aftermath of worlds he's visited. He doesn't just defeat enemies, he makes examples of them. Martian Manhunter stepped forward, his form shifting slightly, unconsciously, as his discomfort grew. This force energy, I can feel it now that I know to look for it. It's in every living thing here, connecting them in ways similar to but distinct from telepathy. And there are beings in this galaxy who radiate it like beacons. His red eyes focused on Hera. These Sith, these dark force users, what drives them? What do they want? Power, a new voice said from the ghost's entrance. Control, the absolute certainty that they know what's best for the galaxy, even if it requires the deaths of billions to achieve it. Everyone turned to see two figures boarding the ship. The first was a man in his 30s, brown hair and beard, wearing a mixture of spacer's clothing and what might have been Jedi robes once, though they were worn and patched. At his belt hung a metal cylinder that Batman's tactical mind immediately identified as a weapon. The second was a teenager, perhaps 16, with dark hair and bright, intelligent eyes that widened comically as he took in the Justice League. Kanan, Hera said, relief obvious in her voice. You're back early. We heard about the incident outside Capital City, Kanan replied, his eyes never leaving the League. TIE fighters disabled without casualties, witnesses reporting beings with impossible abilities. I had to see for myself. His hand drifted toward that cylinder at his belt, not threatening, just ready. I'm Kanan Jarrus. This is Ezra Bridger. And before anyone asks, yes, I'm one of those Jedi you've been discussing. The Flash whistled low. One of the good guys the Empire tried to genocide. Man, we really did land in the middle of a war. Ezra's my Padawan, Kanan continued, still studying the League with an intensity that spoke of training and paranoia in equal measure. I've been teaching him the ways of the Force, trying to keep the Jedi traditions alive. And I have to say, he gestured at the assembled heroes. I've felt a lot of things in the Force. Dark side presences, light side echoes, Force-sensitive individuals scattered across the outer rim. But you? He looked directly at Superman. You're like nothing I've ever felt. It's like you're surrounded by something powerful, something that isn't the Force, but pushes against it. All of you are. What are you? Green Lantern held up his ring, letting it glow with emerald light. We're enhanced beings from another dimension. Most of us have abilities beyond normal human parameters. Superman here, he nodded at the Man of Steel, is probably the most powerful being on this planet right now, maybe in your whole galaxy. He can lift mountains, fly faster than sound, shoot heat beams from his eyes, and survive in the vacuum of space. Ezra's jaw dropped. That's impossible. Even Master Yoda at his peak couldn't. It's not impossible where we come from. Superman interrupted gently. "And these abilities aren't why we're here. We didn't choose this. We're trying to understand your galaxy, figure out how to navigate it ethically." He turned to Kanan. "You were a peacekeeper, a guardian. We do similar work on our world. So tell me, as someone who knows this galaxy, is the Empire pure evil? Or is there complexity I'm missing?" Kanan was quiet for a long moment, his hand finally leaving his lightsaber. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of someone who'd spent years thinking about this exact question. The Empire rose from the ashes of the Republic, which was corrupt and bloated and failing. The Clone Wars devastated thousands of systems. Trillions died. When Emperor Palpatine promised order, stability, peace, people believed him. Some still do. "But," Wonder Woman prompted. "But the price of that order is absolute submission," Kanan continued. "The Empire doesn't govern, it occupies. It doesn't protect citizens. It controls subjects. It maintains peace through fear, through overwhelming military might, through the willingness to destroy anyone who questions it." He activated his lightsaber, the blue blade humming to life. "The Jedi weren't perfect. We were dogmatic, blind to our own flaws, too tied to the Republic's failures. But we stood for something. We tried to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. The Empire stands only for its own perpetuation." Batman had been silent throughout, analyzing, computing, running threat assessments in his mind. Now he spoke, and his voice carried a hard edge. "You're asking us to join your rebellion, to fight your war. But we don't know this galaxy. We don't understand the political complexities, the history, the millions of variables that might make this situation more nuanced than evil Empire versus brave rebels." "Bruce," Superman started, but Batman cut him off. "We've toppled governments before, Clark. We've intervened in wars, stopped tyrants, fought dictators. And sometimes, not often, but sometimes, we've made things worse. Created power vacuums that led to chaos, destabilized regions trying to help them, played into the hands of forces we didn't understand." Batman's eyes swept the Ghost's crew. "I need more than testimonials. I need evidence, data. I need to understand what we're really walking into." Hera studied Batman with new respect. "You're the cautious one, the thinker. Good. We need thinkers." She pulled out a data chip. "This contains everything we've gathered on Imperial atrocities over the past 5 years. Slave labor camps on Kessel, the massacre of Gorse's civilian population, medical experiments on Lothal's farmers, the destruction of Lasan." She glanced at Zeb, whose face had gone hard as stone. 3 billion Lasat, an entire species, reduced to scattered thousands because they resisted occupation. She held out the chip to Batman. "Read it, analyze it, question every word if you need to. But understand this, every hour you delay in deciding whether to help us is an hour the Empire uses to tighten its grip. More people enslaved, more dissidents executed, more families torn apart." Aquaman spoke up for the first time since boarding the ship, his arms still crossed but his expression thoughtful. "You said the Empire spans 1,000,000 worlds. How many does your rebellion control?" "None," Sabine admitted. "We don't control anything. We're insurgents, not an occupying force. We have sympathizers, hidden bases, supply lines. But territory? Actual sovereign systems? The Empire has made sure we can't hold anything. So, even if you win," Aquaman pressed, "what comes after? What government replaces the Empire? Who rules 1,000,000 worlds when the tyrants are gone?" The question hung in the air, uncomfortable and unanswered. Finally, Kanan spoke. We don't know, but we know it has to be better than genocide and slavery. It has to be. Cyborg, still interfacing with the data chip Hera had provided, spoke up. Guys, I'm cross-referencing their claims with the Imperial database I accessed. It's all true. The atrocities, the numbers, the systematic oppression. And there's more. The Emperor, Palpatine. He was the Supreme Chancellor of the Republic before the Empire. He orchestrated the Clone Wars, played both sides, used the conflict to grant himself emergency powers that he never relinquished. A false flag operation, Batman murmured. Create the crisis, then position yourself as the only solution. Classic dictator playbook. Superman's eyes began to glow faintly red, heat vision building as his anger grew. Then we've heard enough. These people need help. This empire needs to be stopped. We've spent enough time debating. No. Batman's voice cracked like a whip. We haven't. Because we need to understand what stopping the empire means, what it costs, who dies in the crossfire. He rounded on Superman, their old argument renewed. You want to fly up to this Death Star and punch through its walls? Fine, you probably could. But then what? The Empire has thousands of fleets, millions of soldiers, a governmental apparatus spanning the entire galaxy. You can't punch all of them, Clark, and the moment you start, the moment you reveal what you can do, you become the thing they unite against. Bruce, they'll study you, Batman continued relentlessly. Find your weaknesses. Create weapons specifically designed to kill you. And when they can't kill you, they'll threaten civilians, hold hostages, force you to choose between your principles and millions of lives. His voice dropped. I've run the scenarios. I always do. And fighting openly against an empire this large, with our abilities this visible, ends in disaster. Every time. Wonder Woman stepped between them, her voice carrying the authority of an Amazon general. Then what do you propose? That we hide? That we do nothing while innocents suffer? I propose we be smart, Batman shot back. We gather intelligence. We find the Empire's weak points, and they have weak points. Every government does. We work with the rebellion, provide support, but we don't become the faces of their movement. We don't make this about us. Hate to interrupt the Justice League strategy session, Flash said, his super speed allowing him to follow the argument that was happening too fast for normal humans. But we've got company. Big company. My speed sense is picking up vibrations, heavy vehicles, lots of them, converging on this position. Green Lantern's ring pulsed urgently. He's right. Imperial forces, a full battalion. AT-ATs, AT-STs, probably 300 Stormtroopers, and... His ring flared brighter, alarm in his voice. Something else. Something that's reading as massively powerful in a way I've never seen before. It's like a star made of... darkness? How is that even possible? Kanan's face went pale. No, they couldn't have sent him. Not for us. We're not important enough. The temperature in the Ghost seemed to drop 10 degrees. Outside the viewport, the grasslands darkened as storm clouds rolled in with unnatural speed. Lightning flashed without thunder, and the Force itself seemed to recoil from what was approaching. Ezra's voice shook. Master Kanan? I feel it. Something terrible. Something that makes my skin crawl and my blood freeze. What is it? Kanan ignited his lightsaber, the blue blade casting dancing shadows. Him. Martian Manhunter staggered, his telepathy suddenly overwhelmed by a presence that radiated darkness, like a black hole radiated gravity. There's a mind out there. Ancient, powerful, utterly ruthless. and it's focused on us with absolute attention. In the distance, visible through the Ghost's viewport, a massive Imperial shuttle descended through the clouds. It was larger than any transport they'd yet seen, black as the void between stars, flanked by TIE fighters that flew in perfect formation. The shuttle landed with mechanical precision, its boarding ramp lowering to reveal a sight that would haunt the Justice League's nightmares for years to come. Darth Vader strode down the ramp like inevitability made flesh. 7 feet of black armor and cybernetic augmentation, his breathing echoing through a respirator that had become the sound of death for 1,000 worlds. His lightsaber hung at his belt, deceptively small for a weapon that had ended so many lives. Behind him, Stormtroopers marched in perfect lockstep, their weapons raised, their loyalty absolute. But it was Vader's presence in the Force that truly terrified. Kanan could feel it like a weight pressing down on reality itself. A wound in the fabric of the universe where anger and hatred had burned so hot for so long that they'd become something transcendent. This was what the dark side could create. A being of pure, focused will, shaped by pain into a weapon of absolute lethality. Vader stopped 50 meters from the Ghost. When he spoke, his voice was mechanically modulated, but carried across the grasslands with perfect clarity. You are the ones who attacked Imperial forces without provocation. You are the ones who arrived from elsewhere. Even through the respirator, they could hear the cold interest in his tone. I am Darth Vader, Lord of the Sith, Supreme Commander of the Imperial Fleet. You will surrender immediately, or I will demonstrate why the Emperor sent me personally to retrieve you. Superman floated out of the Ghost first, his cape billowing in the wind, his eyes locked on the dark figure. I'm Superman. These are the Justice League, and we don't surrender to tyrants. For a long moment, Vader simply stood there, studying this being who spoke with such certainty, such strength. Then, slowly, deliberately, Darth Vader reached out with the Force and tried to crush Superman's throat. The Force gripped, squeezed, applied pressure that should have collapsed windpipe and vertebrae. But Superman didn't move, didn't choke, didn't even flinch. He just smiled, grim and dangerous. That doesn't work on me. Want to try something else? Vader's respirator breath hitched just once in what might have been surprise. Then his lightsaber ignited, the red blade screaming to life, and the Dark Lord of the Sith spoke one word that would echo across the galaxy. Interesting. The standoff lasted exactly 3 heartbeats. Then reality exploded into violence. Vader moved first, his crimson blade carving through the air in a strike that had decapitated Jedi Masters and bisected John droids with equal ease. The Force propelled him forward with inhuman speed, closing the 50-meter gap in seconds, his lightsaber aimed directly at Superman's chest. To the Stormtroopers watching, their Dark Lord was a blur of black armor and red death. To Superman, with his perception accelerated by Kryptonian physiology, Vader moved in slow motion, fast for a human, impossibly fast by this galaxy's standards, but nothing compared to beings who could catch bullets. The Man of Steel didn't dodge. He raised his hand, palm open, and caught the lightsaber blade. The plasma edge, superheated to temperatures that could cut through starship hulls, met invulnerable Kryptonian skin and simply stopped. The blade crackled and hissed, energy bleeding off in waves of heat and light. But Superman's flesh didn't burn, didn't blister, didn't even redden. For a frozen moment, everyone watching, Stormtroopers, Rebels, Justice League alike, could only stare at the impossible sight of a man holding a lightsaber with his bare hand. Then Vader spoke, his mechanized voice carrying a note that might have been respect. Fascinating. Your biology is unlike anything in Imperial records. The Force flows around you like water around stone, present but unable to take hold. His free hand extended, and the air itself seemed to compress. Invisible Force energy hammered into Superman from 6 directions simultaneously. Pressure that should have pulverized bones and ruptured organs. Superman grunted, feeling the impact like distant thunder, like standing in a strong wind. It pushed at him, tested him, but his Kryptonian cellular structure held firm. "I told you," he said, his voice calm despite the cosmic level being trying to kill him. "That doesn't work on me. But this does." His punch was measured, controlled. He'd fought gods and monsters, learned to calibrate his strength across 1,000 battles. He hit Vader in the chest with roughly the force of a speeding truck, enough to disable without killing, enough to send a clear message about the power differential they were dealing with. Vader flew backward like he'd been fired from a cannon, his armored form tumbling across the grasslands before slamming into an AT-ST walker with enough force to crumple the walker's leg joint. The Stormtroopers opened fire immediately, their blasters sending bolts of superheated plasma at Superman from 36 angles. "Covering fire!" Batman's voice cut through the chaos. The League exploded into coordinated action with the practiced efficiency of Earth's greatest heroes. Wonder Woman's bracelets became a blur as she deflected blaster bolts, each impact ringing like a bell as plasma met divine metal. Green Lantern threw up a massive emerald dome over the Ghost, protecting Hera's crew while his ring simultaneously fired precise beam attacks at Stormtrooper weapons, melting barrels and forcing them to drop their blasters. Flash became Crimson Lightning incarnate, moving between Stormtroopers faster than they could track, disarming them with gentle precision. A tap here to knock a blaster loose, a push there to send a trooper stumbling into his companions. To the Imperial forces, it seemed as if their weapons simply vanished from their hands, their targeting solutions scrambled by an opponent who existed in multiple places simultaneously. Aquaman charged the nearest AT-ST, his Atlantean strength allowing him to leap 10 meters straight up and tear the walker's head clean off with his bare hands. The pilot ejected in panic as the war machine toppled like a felled tree. Cyborg's sonic cannon hummed to life, sending precisely modulated sound waves that shattered AT-AT leg joints without harming the pilots inside. Martian Manhunter phased through the Imperial formation, his selective density allowing him to pass through Stormtroopers while simultaneously rendering their weapons useless with strategic density shifts that warped metal and fused firing mechanisms. Batman deployed smoke pellets and flashbangs with surgical precision, creating a fog of war that his cowl's sensors could pierce, but Imperial targeting systems could not. He moved through the chaos like a shadow, appearing behind Stormtroopers to strike nerve clusters that paralyzed without permanent damage, his cape snapping around confused soldiers before they could even raise their weapons. The entire Imperial battalion, 300 elite troops, 4 AT-ATs, a dozen AT-STs, was systematically dismantled in under 2 minutes. Not a single fatality, not even serious injuries. Just an entire company of the Empire's finest rendered unconscious or disarmed by beings who fought with impossible skill and terrifying restraint. On the Ghost's boarding ramp, Ezra stared with his mouth open. Master Kanan, did we just watch 7 people defeat an Imperial battalion without killing anyone? Yes. Kanan's voice was distant, awed, his connection to the Force showing him something unprecedented. The Force is in chaos around them. It's like watching a storm that refuses to follow natural patterns. They're not using the Force, but they're changing it just by existing. Hera's tactical mind was already racing ahead. If they can do this to a battalion, What could they do to a Star Destroyer? To the Death Star itself? "Let's not get ahead of ourselves," Sabine cautioned. But her eyes were bright with hope she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. "They're powerful, sure. But Vader's not." She stopped, because Vader was rising. The Dark Lord stood amidst the wreckage of the AT-ST, his armor dented, his respirator gasping in a pattern that suggested damaged mechanics. But he stood. And as he stood, the Force itself seemed to bow to his will. Reality warping around him in ways that made the League's enhanced senses scream warnings. "Sufficient," Vader said, his lightsaber returning to his hand through telekinesis. "You have demonstrated considerable ability. Now I shall demonstrate mine." He thrust both hands forward, and the world went mad. The Force, that pervasive energy field binding all living things, became a weapon. Vader seized every piece of debris, every disabled walker, every unconscious stormtrooper, and hurled them at the Justice League with the power of a telekinetic hurricane. Tons of metal and bodies became missiles, moving with coordinated precision that no normal mind could orchestrate. But Vader's mind was not normal. It was a weapon honed by decades of war, sharpened by constant pain, focused by hatred into something transcendent. Green Lantern's construct shield expanded, catching the debris in a web of emerald energy. But each impact drained his ring, the power cells struggling in this dimension, and Hal felt his control slipping. "Ring's at 70%. This guy's output is insane." Superman flew into the storm, catching an AT-AT walker that would have crushed the Ghost, his muscles straining, actually straining, under the telekinetically enhanced weight. Vader wasn't just lifting the walker. He was multiplying its effective mass through force manipulation, making it weigh far more than physics should allow. Clark gritted his teeth and threw the walker aside. But 3 more pieces of heavy machinery were already incoming. Wonder Woman's lasso snapped out, wrapping around debris mid-flight and redirecting it away from civilian areas. Her warrior's instincts screamed that this Vader fought like no opponent she'd faced. Not with passion or rage, but with cold, calculated lethality. Every attack served multiple purposes, testing their capabilities, separating their formation, creating opportunities for fatal strikes. And through it all, Vader advanced. Step by inexorable step, his lightsaber weaving a defensive pattern that deflected Flash's supersonic punches. Parried Aquaman's strikes with the flat of the blade. Even managed to track Martian Manhunter's phasing with force-enhanced perception. The Dark Lord was outnumbered 7-1 by beings of tremendous power, and he was holding his ground. Batman watched from his vantage point, analyzing every movement, every tactic. Vader's armor was his life support, the respirator, the chest panel, the sealed systems keeping him alive. A weak point, but getting close enough to exploit it meant getting past that lightsaber, past his force powers, past reflexes honed by decades of combat. Even for the Justice League, this wasn't an easy fight. "Clark," Batman's voice cut through the chaos. "He's directing traffic, not fighting. Every attack is tactical, not emotional. He's learning us." Superman understood immediately. Vader wasn't trying to win this engagement. He was gathering intelligence. Every punch Superman threw told Vader about Kryptonian strength limits. Every speed burst from Flash revealed Speed Force capabilities. Every construct from Green Lantern demonstrated ring technology. They were being studied, cataloged, analyzed for future exploitation. "Everyone, disengage," Superman commanded. "Fall back to..." Vader's hand shot up, and Superman felt something he'd rarely experienced in his career as a hero. genuine danger. The Force couldn't grip his body, couldn't crush his throat, couldn't manipulate his invulnerable form, but it could affect everything around him. The air itself became a weapon, compressed into a sphere of such tremendous pressure that even Superman's hearing registered the sonic boom as oxygen molecules were forced into impossible density. The pressure sphere detonated. The shockwave flattened grasslands for 100 meters in every direction, shattered the viewports of disabled Imperial vehicles, and sent even Superman tumbling through the air like a leaf in a hurricane. It wasn't enough to seriously harm him, but it proved a terrifying point. Vader couldn't hurt Superman directly, but he could hurt him indirectly. And in a galaxy filled with civilians, with fragile ships and space stations, that was all the leverage the Empire needed. Wonder Woman caught Superman before he could crash into the Ghost, her divine strength anchoring both of them against the residual pressure waves. "This Sith Lord fights like Ares at his most cunning," she said, her voice tight. Every movement calculated, every strike purposeful. He is testing not just our power, but our limits. "Then let's show him a limit he can't test," Flash said, vibrating with barely contained energy. His connection to the Speed Force was weak here, compromised, but he could still access enough to do something spectacular. "I'm going to try to phase through his armor, disrupt his systems without hurting him. If I can just..." He became a blur, accelerating to speeds that left afterimages burned into retinas. Barry Allen had phased through walls, through weapons, through the very Earth itself. A man's armor should be no different. He reached Vader in a microsecond and began the phase, his molecules vibrating at frequencies that should allow him to pass through solid matter like a ghost. Vader's lightsaber moved faster than thought, faster than even Kanan believed possible. The blade passed through the space where Flash was phasing, and the interaction between plasma edge and Speed Force energy created a feedback loop that sent lightning crackling across the battlefield. Flash screamed and tumbled out of his phase, smoking and disoriented, his connection to the Speed Force temporarily severed by the unexpected interaction. "Barry!" Green Lantern caught him in an emerald construct, pulling him back to the League's defensive position. What happened? "The lightsaber!" Flash gasped, his healing factor already working but his voice shaken. "It's not just hot plasma. There's something else in it. Some energy that interacted with the Speed Force like antimatter meeting matter. I try that again and I might not come back." Vader deactivated his lightsaber, letting the silence speak for a moment. When he finally spoke, his respirator giving each word mechanical weight, there was something new in his tone. Certainty. "You are powerful. More powerful than perhaps anything in this galaxy save the Emperor himself. But power without understanding is merely potential waiting to be exploited." He gestured at the disabled Imperial forces. "You defeated these troops without fatalities. A noble sentiment. One the rebellion shares." He began walking toward the Ghost, his steps measured, unthreatening now. But nobility is a luxury afforded only to those with overwhelming force. The rebellion cannot match Imperial military might. So they use terrorism, sabotage, tactics that result in civilian deaths they claim to oppose. You allied with them because they told you stories of Imperial atrocities, and those stories are true. His head tilted slightly, but they did not tell you the full context. Superman landed between Vader and the Ghost, his body language protective. "Then tell us, explain how destroying an entire planet of innocent people is anything but evil." "Alderaan was not innocent," Vader replied. and his certainty was chilling. It was the headquarters of Bail Organa's rebel network, the source of funding and weapons for terrorist cells across 100 systems, the homeworld of Princess Leia Organa, one of the rebellion's key operatives. He paused. The Death Star's demonstration was a strategic decision to end the war swiftly, to prevent decades of conflict that would kill far more than 2 billion. One terrible act to prevent countless terrible acts. Is that not the calculation you make when you stop a villain before they can harm more innocents? Batman's jaw clenched. The argument was sickeningly logical, a trolley problem writ large across the galaxy. Kill 2 billion to save trillions from prolonged war. It was the kind of utilitarian calculus that kept Bruce Wayne awake at night. The kind of moral quandary that had no clean answer. You're trying to justify genocide with game theory, Wonder Woman said, her voice dripping with contempt. No ends justify those means. Not ever. Then you have never faced true war, Vader countered. Never made decisions where every choice leads to death. And the only question is how many and how quickly. His respirator wheezed, almost like a sigh. The Emperor brought order to a galaxy tearing itself apart. The Clone Wars devastated thousands of systems. The Separatist crisis threatened to fragment the Republic beyond repair. Palpatine saved civilization, and the price was the centralization of power necessary to prevent such chaos from returning. Kanan's voice rang out from the Ghost's ramp, sharp with anger. He saved civilization by destroying the Jedi? By murdering thousands of peacekeepers who served the galaxy for millennia? The Jedi were complicit in the Republic's failures, Vader said. And now his voice carried a personal edge, something beyond mechanical modulation. They were warriors who called themselves peacekeepers. They commanded slave armies of clones bred for war and called it justice. They were so certain of their righteousness that they grew blind, arrogant, unable to see the darkness growing in their midst. He paused. They deserved their fate. Martian Manhunter, his telepathy finally able to touch the edges of Vader's shielded mind, recoiled from what he felt there. Pain. Endless, searing, all-consuming pain. Physical, emotional, spiritual. And beneath the pain, buried so deep it was almost invisible, a tiny spark of something else. Something that might once have been good. You were a Jedi once, John said quietly. Before you became this. You know the truth of what you're saying, and yet you believe it anyway. How? For the first time, Vader seemed to hesitate. His respirator breathing filled the silence. That mechanical rhythm that had become synonymous with Imperial power. I was a Jedi, he finally acknowledged. I believed in their teachings, followed their code, trusted their wisdom, and they failed me. They failed everyone. His fist clenched. The Empire is not perfect, but it is honest about what it is. It rules through strength, maintains order through fear, and makes no apology for the hard choices necessary to govern a galaxy of 1 trillion souls. Superman shook his head slowly. You're trying to recruit us. Make us see the Empire as the lesser evil, or maybe even the greater good. But we've heard this speech before. Every dictator in history has claimed they're imposing order, saving civilization, making the hard choices others are too weak to make. His eyes began to glow red. And every time, they're lying. To others. To themselves. Then you have made your choice, Vader said. You will side with the rebellion. You will become enemies of the Empire. He raised his hand, and somewhere in orbit, signals were sent. Know this. The Empire will study you. We will learn your capabilities, identify your weaknesses, and develop countermeasures. You may win this battle. You may win 100 battles. But the Empire has the resources of an entire galaxy, and we will never stop until you are either serving us or dead. Cyborg systems screamed a warning. Guys, I'm detecting massive energy signatures dropping out of hyperspace. Imperial Star Destroyers, multiple vectors surrounding this position. Above them, reality tore itself apart as massive wedge-shaped vessels materialized from hyperspace. 3 Imperial Star Destroyers, each one a city-sized engine of destruction, settled into low orbit around Lothal. Their weapons arrays, turbo lasers capable of glassing continents, began tracking toward the surface, toward the Ghost, toward the beings who had humiliated Imperial forces. Vader's respirator seemed to carry satisfaction. The 7th Fleet has arrived. Grand Admiral Thrawn commands it personally. He is a tactical genius without peer, and he now has access to every sensor reading, every tactical analysis of your engagement with my forces. He began walking backward toward his shuttle. You wanted to fight the Empire? Congratulations. The Empire now fights you. The Star Destroyer's main batteries began to glow, building charge. Hera's voice crackled over the Ghost's external speakers. We need to leave, now. If they fire those turbo lasers at ground targets, then half of Lothal's capital region becomes a crater. Kanan finished grimly. And they'll do it. Tarkin's doctrine, acceptable collateral damage in service of eliminating threats. Superman looked up at the Star Destroyers, calculating trajectories, speeds, the time it would take to fly up and disable them before they could fire. But there were 3 of them, and his solar-powered cells were still adapting to this galaxy's unfamiliar stellar radiation. He was strong, possibly strong enough to tear through their hulls, but fast enough to stop all 3 before they fired. With his powers at 85%, Batman's hand gripped his shoulder. Clark, we can't save everyone. Not today. We survive, we learn, we come back stronger. Bruce is right, Wonder Woman said, though every instinct in her warrior's soul rebelled against retreat. We cannot fight blind against an enemy this vast. We need time, strategy, information. Flash, still recovering from his encounter with Vader's lightsaber, nodded weakly. Live to fight another day. It's what heroes do. Superman's jaw clenched so hard his teeth should have shattered. But he was still the leader of the Justice League, still the man who'd learned that sometimes saving everyone meant accepting you couldn't save anyone. Everyone aboard the Ghost, now. The League retreated into Hera's ship, and the Twi'lek pilot's hands flew across controls with desperate precision. The Ghost's engines roared to life, lifting off just as the Star Destroyer's turbo lasers reached full charge. Green lance of superheated plasma lanced down from orbit, striking the exact position where they'd been standing seconds before. The grasslands evaporated, stone superheated into glass, and a crater 30 meters deep materialized in an instant. Jumping to hyperspace, Hera announced, her hands steady despite the chaos. The Ghost accelerated toward orbit on a vector calculated to avoid the Star Destroyer's firing solutions, and reality twisted as they made the jump to light speed, leaving Lothal and Darth Vader behind. In the shuttle, watching the Ghost disappear into hyperspace, Vader stood in silence. Behind him, an Imperial officer approached cautiously. Lord Vader, should we pursue? No, Vader said quietly. Grand Admiral Thrawn will handle the pursuit. I have learned what I needed. He turned to face the officer, his mask reflecting the flames still burning in the crater. These beings are not force-sensitive, yet they resist its influence. They possess abilities beyond anything cataloged in Imperial records. They allied with the rebellion not from ideology, but from moral simplicity. His respirator wheezed. They are dangerous, but they are predictable, and predictable enemies can be defeated. He walked back toward his shuttle, already composing his report to the Emperor. Palpatine would be fascinated by these dimensional travelers, perhaps even concerned. Good. Let his master feel a moment of uncertainty. It had been far too long since anything truly unexpected had occurred in the galaxy. As the shuttle lifted off, Vader allowed himself a moment of introspection. Superman had caught his lightsaber with a bare hand. The Flash had phased through solid matter. These Justice League possessed power that made even Force users seem limited. And they had chosen the losing side in a war that had already been decided. In the darkness of his meditation chamber, Vader would later reflect on this day. The day the Empire encountered beings from beyond the known universe. The day he had seen something in their eyes, particularly in Superman's eyes, that he had not seen in his own reflection for 19 years. Hope. It disgusted him. And yet, somewhere deep in the buried remains of what had once been Anakin Skywalker, it terrified him even more. The Ghost hurtled through hyperspace, that impossible realm of compressed dimensions and accelerated physics that allowed ships to traverse the galaxy in days rather than lifetimes. Through the viewport, reality itself seemed to flow like liquid light, blue and white streaks stretching into infinity. Inside the common room, the Justice League and Phoenix Squadron gathered in a silence heavy with implications. Superman stood at the viewport, his enhanced vision watching the hyperspace tunnel with fascination and frustration in equal measure. His body was still adjusting to this dimension's physics, his cells slowly adapting to unfamiliar stellar radiation. But the process was incomplete. Against Vader, he'd felt something he rarely experienced: limitation. Not defeat. He was confident he could have continued fighting, but the awareness that his usual overwhelming advantage was diminished here. So, Sabine said, breaking the silence as she worked on repairing a damaged comm relay. That's Darth Vader, the Empire's attack dog, the Jedi killer. She didn't look up from her work, but her hands trembled slightly. And you just fought him to a standstill. Do you people understand how insane that is? We've fought gods, Wonder Woman replied, cleaning dirt from her bracers with methodical precision. Beings who claimed dominion over concepts like war, death, and tyranny itself. This Vader, powerful as he is still mortal, still limited by flesh and technology. Mortal, Kanan repeated, his voice distant. He sat cross-legged in meditation, his lightsaber resting across his knees. You say that. But you don't understand what the Sith are. They're not just Force users. They're parasites. They feed on the dark side, let it consume them until there's nothing left but hunger and will. His eyes opened, focusing on the League. I felt Vader in the Force during that fight. He's not a man wearing a dark side like armor. He is the dark side, given form and purpose. Batman stood in the corner, his cowl sensors interfacing with the Ghost's computer systems through a bypass Cyborg had engineered. Data streamed across his lenses: Imperial fleet movements, propaganda broadcasts, economic reports, military deployment schedules. He was building a picture of the Empire, piece by piece, analyzing its structure for weaknesses. Vader's armor is a life support system, he said without looking up. His breathing suggests severe respiratory damage. The chest panel houses critical components: power supply, filtration, possibly cardiac assistance. He's a cyborg, like Victor. but his technology is primitive compared to what we have on Earth. Primitive? Zeb laughed harshly from where he leaned against the wall. That primitive cyborg has personally killed more people than some planetary plagues. He's boarded rebel cruisers alone and walked out without a scratch, leaving entire crews dead behind him. I'm not dismissing the threat, Batman clarified. I'm identifying exploitable weaknesses. His reliance on that armor means electromagnetic pulses could disable him. His force abilities, while formidable, have clear limitations. He couldn't directly affect Superman, which means sufficiently advanced or alien biology provides resistance. His fighting style is aggressive but calculated, which means he can be predicted, anticipated. Flash, sprawled in a chair with a cooling pack against his chest where the lightsaber feedback had burned him, spoke up. Yeah, well, good luck predicting a guy who can see the future. That's what the Force does, right? Kanan? The Jedi nodded reluctantly. To a degree, the Force grants insight, not prophecy. You can feel intentions before they manifest, sense danger before it strikes, perceive patterns in the chaos of battle. But it's not infallible. Strong emotions, unexpected actions, sheer randomness, all of these can cloud Force visions. He looked at the League with something like hope. You're from outside this dimension. The Force flows around you strangely. It's possible that Vader and other Force users will have difficulty reading your intentions, predicting your actions. Good, Green Lantern said, his ring held up to the light as he examined its dimmed glow. Because we're going to need every advantage. My ring's at 62% charge and dropping. Whatever's interfering with Oan energy in this dimension, it's persistent. I can make a few more big constructs, maybe participate in 2 or 3 more major engagements. But then I'm going to need to recharge. He looked at the others grimly. And I don't know if recharging will even work here. Cyborg had been silent. His consciousness split between the conversation and the Imperial database. He was still hacking through Ghost's systems. Now he spoke, and his voice carried a weight that made everyone turn. Guys, I've been analyzing the Empire's economic structure, and we have a serious problem. This isn't just a military dictatorship. It's a completely integrated governmental system. The Empire controls trade routes, manufacturing, banking, resource extraction, food distribution, everything. If we destabilize it too quickly, we're not just toppling a regime. We're potentially collapsing the economic infrastructure that keeps 1 trillion people fed and sheltered. Aquaman frowned. You're saying we can't just remove the Emperor without causing mass starvation and chaos? Exactly, Cyborg confirmed. The old Republic was decentralized. Individual systems had autonomy, their own economies, their own governance. The Empire replaced all that with centralized control. Most systems can't even feed themselves anymore without imperial logistics. We overthrow the Empire without a transition plan, and we're looking at the largest humanitarian crisis in galactic history. The weight of that statement settled over the room like a physical presence. Superman's hands clenched into fists. He'd toppled dictators before, stopped tyrannical governments, fought against oppression across Earth. But Earth was one planet. This was a galaxy of millions of inhabited worlds, trillions of beings, an interconnected web of dependency so vast that pulling even one major thread could unravel everything. Then we don't overthrow it, Batman said quietly. Not immediately. We undermine it. We expose its crimes, support alternatives, build parallel structures that can take over when the Empire falls. But above all, we ensure that when it does fall, something better is ready to take its place. Hera, who'd been piloting in silence while listening through the internal comms, spoke up from the cockpit. That's a long-term strategy. The rebellion's been trying that for years. Meanwhile, the Empire builds more Star Destroyers, recruits more Stormtroopers, tightens its grip system by system. Her voice carried frustration born of too many losses, too many defeats. How many people die while we're building these parallel structures? It was the question that had no good answer. Wonder Woman, who had led armies and made terrible decisions in the service of victory, understood the weight of it. "We cannot save everyone," she said, and her voice carried the sorrow of someone who'd learned that truth through blood and fire. "But we can save more through wisdom than through rage. We must be strategic." "Strategic," Ezra said bitterly. The teenager had been quiet until now, sitting in the corner with his arms wrapped around his knees. That's what everyone always says. Be strategic, be patient, be smart. Meanwhile, the Empire took my parents. Took them years ago for making anti-imperial broadcasts, and I don't even know if they're alive. His eyes, bright with unshed tears, fixed on Superman. You can fly through space. You can lift entire buildings. You could probably tear apart the Death Star with your bare hands. And you're going to be strategic while people suffer? The accusation hung in the air. Superman met the boy's gaze, and there was infinite compassion in his eyes, tempered by hard-won wisdom. "I've lifted buildings, Ezra. I've stopped missiles, prevented nuclear war, saved millions of lives. But I've also learned that raw power without wisdom creates more problems than it solves." He moved to kneel in front of the boy, bringing himself to eye level. "If I flew to Coruscant right now and confronted the Emperor, what happens? Maybe I win. Maybe I lose. We don't know what Palpatine is capable of. But let's say I win. I defeat Vader. I defeat the Emperor. I destroy their centers of power. Then what?" He gestured around the ship. "The Empire has thousands of Star Destroyers, millions of Stormtroopers, an entire military-industrial complex spanning the galaxy. Without leadership, they don't just surrender. They fragment. Different admirals claim territory. Warlords rise. The galaxy descends into civil war, system fighting system, with no central authority to prevent genocide or famine, or the complete breakdown of civilization." His voice softened. "I learned this lesson on Earth, Ezra. I learned that sometimes the most heroic thing you can do is not punch the villain, but build something better than what they destroyed." Ezra's jaw clenched, but he nodded slowly, the anger in his eyes mixing with reluctant understanding. Kanan placed a hand on his apprentice's shoulder, pride evident in the gesture. Martian Manhunter, who had been attempting to meditate and process the overwhelming sensory input of this new dimension, finally spoke. "There is another consideration. This Emperor, Palpatine, is not merely powerful in this Force energy. He is ancient. I can feel his presence as a weight on reality itself, even from here, even through hyperspace. He is like a black hole of malevolent will." Jun's red eyes swept the room. "Whatever we do, wherever we strike, we must assume he knows, or will know soon. Then we use that," Batman said, his strategic mind already working through scenarios. "We make him react to us. We force him to waste resources tracking us, defending against us, diverting attention from the rebellion's real operations. We become a distraction, a misdirection." Sabine looked up from her repairs, interest sparking. "You're talking about asymmetric warfare, using your abilities not for direct confrontation, but for tactical disruption. Hit supply lines, free prisoners, destroy weapons facilities, targets that hurt the Empire's capabilities without triggering total war. Exactly, Batman confirmed. We have capabilities the Empire can't counter yet. Superman can move faster than their sensors can track, hit targets, and be gone before reinforcements arrive. Flash, even compromised, is still faster than anything they have. Wonder Woman's equipment is effectively indestructible by their standards. We use these advantages strategically, not dramatically. While gathering intelligence on Imperial leadership, Cyborg added, picking up the thread, I can slice their networks, find classified information, identify corruption, expose the gaps between the Empire's propaganda and reality. We can't fight them militarily, they're too big. But we can fight them informationally. Aquaman had been listening with growing understanding. On Atlantis, he dealt with political complexity, with the challenge of ruling a kingdom that existed hidden beneath surface dwellers' awareness. You're talking about insurgency, not invasion. About making the Empire's own size work against it. The larger an organization, the more communication lag, the more opportunities for things to go wrong. Precisely, Batman said. And we have one more advantage. They don't understand us yet. Vader gathered intelligence, but he didn't gather enough. They know we're powerful, but they don't know our limits, our full capabilities, our technology. That unknown factor is a weapon, but only if we use it before they neutralize it. Hera's voice crackled over the comm. We're approaching our destination, Yavin 4. Rebel base, heavily shielded, supposedly unknown to the Empire. There was uncertainty in her tone. Supposedly. The Ghost dropped out of hyperspace near a massive gas giant, its swirling orange and red atmosphere dominating the viewport. Orbiting the giant was a small green moon, its surface covered in dense jungle and ancient temples. As they approached, other ships became visible. Modified freighters, outdated fighters, a handful of cruisers that looked like they'd been held together through willpower and prayer. The Rebel Alliance's fleet, such as it was. Flash whistled low. That's it? That's their navy? The Empire has Star Destroyers the size of cities, and these guys are flying what looks like my grandfather's collection of classic cars. These classic cars have survived against impossible odds. Zeb growled defensively. Every ship out there has a crew that's chosen to fight instead of submit. Show some respect. As the Ghost descended through Yavin 4's atmosphere, the jungle canopy opened up to reveal ancient temples that had been converted into a military base. Rebel personnel moved between buildings with practiced efficiency, while fighters underwent maintenance in open-air hangars. It was simultaneously impressive and heartbreaking. A functioning military operation built on desperation and hope in equal measure. The Ghost landed on a designated pad, and the boarding ramp lowered to reveal a welcoming committee that made even the Justice League pause. At the center stood a woman in a white senatorial gown, her dark hair styled in complex braids, her bearing regal despite the military surroundings. Princess Leia Organa of Alderaan, or what had been Alderaan. Flanking her was a man in rebel military uniform, his weathered face and general's insignia marking him as someone who'd fought in wars before most of the base personnel were born. And behind them, a figure in simple robes, his presence in the Force like a calm pool in a chaotic river. Kanan's breath caught. Master Obi-Wan? The older man smiled gently. Not quite, young Jedi. Ben Kenobi these days, though I answer to the old title when circumstances warrant. His eyes, blue and ancient, swept across the Justice League with an intensity that saw far more than should be possible. So, The Force sends us champions from beyond the stars. How unexpected. Superman descended the ramp first, his cape settling around him as he took in the rebel leadership. I'm Superman. These are my teammates, the Justice League. We're not from your galaxy, but we've been told you're fighting against tyranny. We'd like to help. Leia's expression was unreadable, her diplomatic training evident in every controlled gesture. Help? How generous. Tell me, Superman, do you know what it costs to fight the Empire? My homeworld was destroyed 3 weeks ago. 2 billion people, including my parents, vaporized as a demonstration of Imperial power. Because I chose to fight. Her voice never wavered, never cracked, but the pain beneath it was infinite. Can you bring them back? Can your powers undo genocide? The question hit like a physical blow. Superman's jaw clenched, and for a moment, he couldn't speak. Because the answer was no. He couldn't turn back time, couldn't resurrect the dead, couldn't undo what the Death Star had done. All his power, all his abilities, and he was helpless before the finality of death. Wonder Woman stepped forward, her voice carrying Amazonian authority. No, we cannot resurrect the dead, but we can ensure their deaths are not meaningless. We can fight to prevent such atrocities from happening again. And we bring capabilities your rebellion does not possess. Capabilities, the general said, his voice gravelly. I'm General Jan Dodonna, commanding this base. Hera's report says you disabled an Imperial battalion and engaged Darth Vader himself without casualties. Impressive. But capabilities aren't the same as commitment. What do we know about you? Where do your loyalties lie? For all we know, this dimensional accident is an elaborate Imperial infiltration. Batman stepped forward, and something in his bearing made even the general pause. You want proof of our intentions? Fine. Cyborg, transfer the files. Victor's eye glowed, and suddenly the base's main holographic display activated, showing data they should have had no access to. Imperial fleet deployments for the next month. Security codes for 3 Star Destroyers. The locations of hidden weapons facilities. Encrypted communications between Moffs discussing internal power struggles. We've been in your dimension for less than a day, Batman said flatly. In that time, we've extracted more actionable intelligence from Imperial networks than you probably gather in a month. That's what we bring, among other things. Leia's eyes widened fractionally, her diplomatic mask slipping just enough to show genuine surprise. How did you? We have technology and abilities your galaxy hasn't encountered, Cyborg explained. My connection to computer systems transcends your encryption standards. I can access Imperial networks, extract data, and ghost out before they know I was there. That's just one of our capabilities. Obi-Wan Kenobi had been silent throughout, his eyes half closed, his presence in the Force reaching out to touch these newcomers. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of decades of wisdom. You are not of the Force, yet you affect it merely by existing. Like stones dropped in a still pond, your presence creates ripples that extend far beyond your immediate actions. He opened his eyes fully, and there was sadness there. The Emperor will have felt those ripples. Even now, he is likely contemplating what you represent. Let him contemplate, Superman said, his voice hard. We've faced tyrants before. We'll face this one too. Will you? Obi-Wan challenged gently. The Emperor is not merely a tyrant. He is the culmination of a Sith plan that has been unfolding for 1,000 years. He is patient, cunning, and powerful beyond measure in the dark side of the Force. and he has already demonstrated his willingness to destroy entire planets to maintain control. The old Jedi's gaze was penetrating. What will you do, Superman, when he threatens to destroy 10 planets unless you surrender? 100? When your very presence becomes the excuse for genocide? The question stopped Superman cold, because he'd faced this before in different forms. Villains who took hostages, who threatened civilians, who forced impossible choices. But never at this scale. Never with billions of lives hanging on his decisions. Then we make sure he never gets that opportunity. Batman interjected. We strike first, strike smart, and strike in ways he can't counter or predict. We become the chaos in his ordered galaxy. Leia studied the League for a long moment, her expression calculating. Finally, she nodded. Very well. You want to help? Then help. We have targets that need hitting, intelligence that needs gathering, prisoners that need freeing. Prove yourselves in action, and we'll discuss deeper integration. She gestured toward the command center. But understand, the rebellion survives on trust. Break that trust, and you'll find yourselves fighting alone against the Empire. And no one survives that. As the League followed Leia into the command center, Obi-Wan caught Superman's arm, his grip surprisingly strong for a man his age. A word, if you would. Superman nodded, letting the others proceed ahead. When they were alone, Obi-Wan's expression grew grave. You carry yourself like a man used to being the strongest in any room, to having answers, solutions, the power to simply overcome obstacles through sheer force. He paused. That will not work here. The Empire's strength is not in its power, it's in its ability to corrupt good intentions, to twist noble actions into justifications for greater evil. Be careful, Superman. The dark side feeds on certainty, on righteous anger, on the belief that the ends justify the means. I've resisted mind control before, Superman said. I've fought off telepathic attacks, magical influence. This is not an attack, Obi-Wan interrupted. The dark side doesn't invade. It seduces. It whispers that if you just use a little more force, accept a little more violence, compromise a little more of your principles, you can save everyone. And before you know it, you've become what you fought against. His eyes held ancient sorrow. I've seen it happen to the best of us, to the Chosen One himself. Superman met the old Jedi's gaze. Then I'll have to be better than the best. Obi-Wan smiled sadly. That's what Anakin said, right before he fell. Inside the command center, the Justice League was already integrating with Rebel operations, their capabilities being assessed and deployed. Outside, in the jungles of Yavin 4, exotic birds called out in alien harmonies. And far above, in the cold reaches of space, Imperial Star Destroyers began the systematic process of tracking a ghost ship through hyperspace lanes, following a trail that would lead them, eventually, to this very moon. The war between the Justice League and the Galactic Empire had truly begun. The command center of the Great Temple on Yavin 4 was a hive of controlled chaos, a stark contrast to the serene, ancient stone of its exterior. Rebel technicians scurried between consoles, their faces illuminated by the blue glow of tactical displays showing Imperial fleet movements across the mid-rim. In the center of the room, the Justice League stood with Princess Leia, General Dodonna, and Obi-Wan Kenobi, their presence causing a constant, subtle stir among the base personnel. The problem is one of scale, Dodonna explained, gesturing at a star map that depicted the galaxy as a sprawling tapestry of light. The Empire can be in 1,000 places at once. We cannot. We strike a supply depot here." He pointed to a system in the outer rim. "And while our forces are committed, the Empire tightens its grip on 3 other systems. We are reacting. We need to force them to react to us. Then we give them multiple, simultaneous problems," Batman stated, his gaze fixed on the map. His mind was already cross-referencing the data with the Imperial intelligence Cyborg had extracted. "We have the capability to hit multiple high-value targets in a short time frame. Targets that are geographically dispersed but strategically critical." Leia studied him, her arms crossed. "Such as?" "Cyborg," Batman said, not taking his eyes off the map. Victor Stone stepped forward, his arm transforming into a projector that cast a new set of coordinates over the display. "I've identified 3 primary targets. First, an Imperial research facility on Lothal, developing a new type of ion cannon designed to disable capital ship shields. Second, a communications hub on Centaurs that coordinates all Imperial shipping in the Siswena sector. Third, and most critically, a secret prison on Kessel, where the Empire is holding Mon Mothma." A stunned silence fell over the command center. Leia's composure broke completely. "Mon Mothma? She's alive? Our intelligence indicated she was executed on Coruscant weeks ago." "The execution was a fabrication," Cyborg confirmed. "She's being held for interrogation. Palpatine wants the names of every senator and planetary governor still secretly supporting the rebellion. If he gets them, your entire political network collapses." The stakes were now terrifyingly clear. Obi-Wan placed a hand on Leia's shoulder, a steadying gesture. "This changes everything. Her rescue is paramount. Which is exactly why we hit all 3 targets at once," Superman said, his voice resonating with conviction. "The Empire will expect a single, focused rescue attempt on Kessel. They'll concentrate their forces there. They won't be prepared for a multi-pronged assault across the galaxy." Dodonna frowned, stroking his beard. "It's a sound strategy in theory, but the logistics are impossible. Even if we committed our entire fleet, we couldn't strike 3 such heavily defended targets simultaneously. The travel time alone." "Travel time isn't a problem for us," Green Lantern interjected, holding up his ring. Its glow was steadier now, having conserved power. "I can create a warp tunnel. It'll burn through a lot of my reserve, but I can get 1 team to Centaurs and back. The other targets?" He looked at his teammates. "I can get to Lothal and back under my own power," Superman said. "The solar radiation here is different, but I'm adapting. My speed is almost back to normal." "And Kessel?" Leia asked, her eyes wide with a hope she clearly dared not fully feel. "Kessel is the most dangerous," Batman said. "It's a maximum security prison inside a spice mine, guarded by a Star Destroyer and a full legion of Stormtroopers. It requires a team, a small, highly skilled team." He looked at Wonder Woman, then at the Flash, who was testing his reflexes by vibrating his hand in and out of phase. "Diana, Barry, you're with me? We'll take the Ghost. Its stealth systems give us the best chance of getting past the orbital patrols." The plan was audacious to the point of insanity. 3 near-suicidal missions, launched at the same moment, relying on abilities the Empire was still struggling to comprehend. It was the perfect application of the Justice League's unique strengths. "The Empire will be monitoring for hyperspace signatures," Hera cautioned from the pilot station she'd taken over. "If we all jump at once, from the same point, they'll know it's a coordinated action." "Then we don't all use hyperspace," Superman said. "Hal, you create your warp. I'll fly through real space. The Ghost is the only one that needs to jump, and you can mask your signature, correct?" Hera nodded, a fierce grin spreading across her face. "Chopper and I have a few tricks. We can make it look like a freighter making a routine run to the Corellian trade spine. They'll never see us coming." The teams were set. Superman would handle Lothal alone. Green Lantern would warp himself and Cyborg to Centaurus to dismantle the communications hub. Batman, Wonder Woman, and the Flash would board the Ghost with Hera and Kanan for the assault on Kessel. The rest of the League, Aquaman and Martian Manhunter, would remain on Yavin 4 as a strategic reserve and to protect the base. As the teams moved to their departure points, Obi-Wan approached Superman. "Lothal is under the command of Grand Admiral Thrawn now. He is not like other Imperial commanders. He does not think in terms of brute force. He studies art, culture, the psychology of his enemies. He will have analyzed the data from your first encounter. He will be waiting." Superman met the Jedi's concerned gaze. "Let him wait. I'm not going to Lothal to fight him. I'm going to dismantle a weapon and leave. He can study that." With a nod, Superman shot into the sky, a blue and red streak that pierced Yavin 4's atmosphere and vanished into the blackness of space, accelerating to speeds that defied the laws of physics as the Empire understood them. At the same time, Green Lantern focused his will, his ring flaring with emerald energy that tore a hole in the fabric of reality. A shimmering gateway that led not through hyperspace, but through a folded dimension of pure willpower. He and Cyborg stepped through, and the gateway snapped shut behind them. On the Ghost, Batman oversaw the final preparations. Wonder Woman checked her gear, her expression that of a warrior preparing for a righteous battle. The Flash paced, a blur of nervous energy. "Remember the objective," Batman said, his voice low. "Infiltration, extraction, exfiltration. We are not there to engage the entire garrison. We find Mon Mothma, we get her out, we leave. Understood?" "Understood," Wonder Woman affirmed. The Flash vibrated to a stop. "Find the VIP, grab the VIP, zoom out. Got it." Hera's voice came over the ship's intercom. "Punching it." The Ghost leapt into hyperspace, leaving Yavin 4 behind. Lothal, the research facility, was a stark, gray monolith set against Lothal's rolling grasslands, its perimeter guarded by towering AT-AT walkers and patrols of death troopers. From high orbit, Superman used his telescopic and X-ray vision to map the entire complex, identifying the ion cannon prototype in a shielded laboratory and the facility's main power core. He descended like a thunderbolt, landing in the central courtyard with a shockwave that sent stormtroopers tumbling. Alarms blared, and the AT-ATs turned their massive heads, their heavy blaster cannons powering up. "Attention, facility personnel!" Superman's voice booted, amplified to be heard across the entire base. "This is a targeted strike. Evacuate the ion cannon research wing immediately. You have 60 seconds. The response was a storm of laser fire. Blaster bolts splashed harmlessly against his chest. The AT-ATs fired, their heavy cannons unleashing volleys that would vaporize a tank. Superman stood his ground, the explosions washing over him like water. He didn't want to destroy the facility. There were scientists, technicians, people just doing their jobs. So he moved with precision. His heat vision, a fine, controlled beam, sliced through the walkers' leg joints, sending them crashing to the ground, disabled. He moved through the base at super speed, disarming every soldier he passed, stacking their weapons in a neat pile in the courtyard. Inside the command center, Grand Admiral Thrawn watched on the monitors, his glowing red eyes narrowed in fascination, not alarm. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back, studying the being who moved through his defenses like they weren't there. Fascinating, Thrawn murmured to the terrified captain beside him. Total invulnerability to energy weapons, superhuman speed and strength, and a pronounced reluctance to cause fatal casualties. Note how he disables the walkers by targeting their mobility, not their reactors. He is powerful, but constrained by a moral code. That is a lever. On the screen, Superman reached the shielded laboratory. He placed his hands against the reinforced Dura-Steel door, and with a screech of tortured metal, peeled it open like the lid of a can. He located the ion cannon prototype, a massive crystalline device, and focused his heat vision on it. The crystal glowed, then shattered into 1,000,000 harmless pieces. His mission complete, Superman turned to leave. As he did, Thrawn's voice echoed through the base's PA system, calm and cultured. Superman, a question if I may. You fight for justice, for order. The Empire is order. Why side with the chaos of rebellion? Superman looked up, as if he could see the Grand Admiral through a dozen floors of metal and stone. There's a difference between order and tyranny. You should learn it. He shot back into the sky, leaving a base full of disarmed, bewildered Imperials, and one very thoughtful Chiss Admiral. Centaures. The communications hub was a forest of towering transceivers reaching into the smog-choked sky of the industrial world. Green Lantern and Cyborg materialized on a rooftop overlooking the facility, the emerald glow of the warp tunnel fading behind them. Ring at 55%, Hal reported. Let's make this quick. Quick is my specialty, Cyborg said, his arm transforming and plugging into a data port on the roof's communication array. I'm in. Their network security is cute. Uploading a logic bomb now. This should scramble their frequencies and send their entire shipping schedule into chaos for the next month. Suddenly, the air was filled with the scream of TIE fighters. Not the standard models, but advanced interceptors. Their wings shaped like arrows, they swarmed the sky, firing not at the heroes, but at the communications towers themselves. They're trying to collapse the towers on us, Green Lantern shouted. He threw up a massive shield, but the strain was immense. The towers were enormous, and the ring's power was fading faster than expected. The logic bomb is at 80%, Cyborg yelled over the explosions. I need 30 more seconds. We don't have 30 seconds. Hal grunted, his construct flickering as a tower groaned and began to topple directly toward them. He poured more will into the shield, his face a mask of concentration. This was what Batman had warned them about. The Empire was already adapting, using their tactics against them. Got it! Cyborg yelled, disconnecting. Now get us out of here. With a final, monumental effort, Green Lantern reinforced his shield long enough for the tower to crash against it and slide harmlessly to the side. Then he grabbed Cyborg, and with the last dregs of his power, created a small warp tunnel just as the TIE fighters closed in for the kill. They tumbled through, the tunnel collapsing into nothingness behind them. Kessel the Ghost merged from hyperspace at the edge of the Kessel system, its sensors immediately picking up the Imperial I-class Star Destroyer Persecutor in high orbit, its belly facing the barren gray planet. Right on time? Hera said. Their sensor sweep just passed over us. They didn't see a thing. Batman studied the readouts. The prison is in the main mine shaft, level 7, heavily guarded. Flash, you're up first. Get inside, find Mon Mothma's exact location, and report back. Do not engage. On it, the Flash said, and in a crackle of red lightning, he was gone. Down on the surface, the Flash became a whisper, a gust of wind moving through the prison security checkpoints. He passed stormtroopers so quickly, they only felt a sudden breeze. He scanned every cell, his accelerated perception allowing him to read nameplates and identify faces in microseconds. He found her in a maximum security block, held in a force-fielded cell, guarded by 2 royal guards in crimson robes and helmets. She was sitting calmly on a bench, her posture still that of a stateswoman despite her imprisonment. The flash vibrated back to the ghost, which had landed silently in a shadowy canyon. Found her? 7th level, cell block D. 2 red guys with fancy pikes. Royal Guards, Kanan said grimly. Elite. Trained in Terras Kazi, the martial art designed to kill Force users. They will not be easy to bypass. We're not bypassing them, Wonder Woman said, hefting her shield. We're going through them. The team moved out. Batman, Wonder Woman, Flash, and Kanan. They entered the mine through a ventilation shaft Batman had identified, moving silently through the oppressive darkness. The air was thick with the smell of dust and despair. They reached cell block D without incident, the Flash having already disabled the security cameras and door controls. The 2 royal guards stood impassively before Mon Mothma's cell. The moment the team entered the corridor, the guards moved, their force pikes igniting with a menacing hum. They were impossibly fast, their movements a blur. Wonder Woman met the first one's charge, her bracelets deflecting the force pike with a shower of sparks. The impact was tremendous, the vibration jarring her arm. These were not ordinary soldiers. Kanan ignited his lightsaber and engaged the second guard. The guard's pike moved with uncanny speed, parrying the blue blade, using the force-resistant material of the weapon to its advantage. It was a brutal, close-quarters duel. Batman now, Wonder Woman shouted, holding her opponent at bay. Batman threw a series of smoke pellets and sonic grenades. The guards, trained to fight through sensory impairment, were only momentarily disoriented. But a moment was all the Flash needed. He became a crimson vortex, moving between the 2 guards, his vibrations disrupting the molecular cohesion of their armor. He didn't hit them. He simply made it impossible for them to stand, their bodies buffeted by a hurricane of precise, super-speed strikes. They collapsed, unconscious. Wonder Woman shattered the control panel for the force field with a precise strike of her sword. The field flickered and died. Mon Mothma looked up, her eyes widening in shock and relief. Kanan, who are these people? Friends, Batman said tersely. We're getting you out. Their comms crackled. It was Hera, her voice tight with panic. We have a problem. The Star Destroyer, it's launching TIE fighters directly at our position. They've found us. How? Wonder Woman asked. They were waiting for us, Batman realized, his voice grim. This was a trap. They knew we would come for her. As if on cue, a new familiar voice echoed through the prison's PA system, mechanized and heavy with menace. You have taken something that belongs to the Empire. From the far end of the corridor, a shadow fell. Black armor, a flowing cape, the rhythmic hiss of a respirator. Darth Vader ignited his lightsaber, the crimson blade illuminating the darkness like a promise of death. Now, he said, you will return it. The crimson blade cast long, dancing shadows down the prison corridor, painting the grim walls in hues of blood and fire. Darth Vader stood as the embodiment of Imperial will, a silent promise of violence that made the very air feel thick and heavy. The 2 unconscious royal guards at his feet were a testament to the League's skill, but they were merely the prelude to the main event. Flash, get her out, Batman commanded, his voice a low growl. He didn't need to specify the plan. They had trained for this for years. Distract and evacuate. Barry Allen became a blur of motion, vibrating through the cell's remains to Mon Mothma's side. "Ma'am, you're going to want to hold on tight," he said, his usual humor absent, replaced by a focused intensity. In the next instant, they were gone. A streak of red and white retreating down the corridor at impossible speeds. Vader made no move to stop them. His masked gaze remained fixed on the three figures standing between him and his quarry. The warrior, the knight, and the detective. "Your speedster cannot outrun the Empire's reach," Vader intoned. "He merely delays the inevitable." "We specialize in defying the inevitable," Wonder Woman replied, settling into a fighting stance, her sword held ready, her shield braced. Beside her, Kanan Jarrus breathed deeply, centering himself in the Force, his blue lightsaber humming a counterpoint to Vader's red scream. Batman faded into the shadows along the wall, becoming little more than a whisper of black cloth. He was the strategist, the observer, waiting for the opening the others would create. Vader moved. It was not a run, but a surge of dark side energy that propelled him forward like a missile. He went straight for Wonder Woman, recognizing her as the greatest physical threat. His lightsaber came down in a brutal overhead slash meant to cleave her in two. The impact when she caught it on her shield was cataclysmic. A shockwave of pure force erupted outwards, cracking the stone walls and sending dust raining from the ceiling. Diana grunted, her boots scraping back several inches, but she held. The divine metal of her shield, forged by Hephaestus himself, glowed where the plasma edge met it, but did not yield. "Your weapon is impressive," Vader noted, the mechanized voice carrying a hint of clinical interest. "It is not of this galaxy." "There is much your Empire does not understand," she retorted, shoving forward with all her Amazonian strength, forcing his blade back for a precious second. In that opening, Kanan struck. His blue blade wove a complex pattern, a form-the-three defense that flowed seamlessly into a sharp, precise thrust at the gaps in Vader's armor at the shoulder joint. It was a perfect textbook attack. Vader's free hand came up. He didn't bother to parry with his own blade. He simply caught Kanan's lightsaber in a telekinetic grip, freezing it inches from its target. The Jedi's eyes widened in shock and pain as the Force itself turned against him, his own weapon held immobile. "You have learned the forms, Jedi," Vader said, his attention still partly on Wonder Woman, who was pressing her attack. "But you have not learned the power behind them." With a contemptuous flick of his wrist, Vader sent Kanan flying backward into the wall with a sickening crunch. The Jedi slid to the floor, his lightsaber deactivated and clattering away. His body stunned. Wonder Woman roared, a battle cry that had echoed across the fields of Themyscira. She redoubled her efforts, her sword a silver blur. She was faster than Vader, her centuries of training allowing her to anticipate his moves. She landed a glancing blow on his armored chest plate, the divine edge scoring a deep groove in the durasteel. Vader staggered back a step, his respirator hitching. For the first time, something that might have been surprise registered in his posture. "You can harm me?" he stated. A rarity. He ceased treating her as a mere obstacle and began treating her as a genuine opponent. His attacks became faster, more fluid, a terrifying fusion of raw power and impeccable swordsmanship. The dark side flowed through him, augmenting his already formidable skills. He was no longer just a Sith Lord. He was a force of nature. Wonder Woman found herself on the defensive, her shield and sword moving in a constant, ringing parry against the relentless assault, Each block sent jolts of numbing force up her arms. He was stronger than her, significantly so. This was the moment Batman had been waiting for. While Vader was fully engaged, a canister the size of his thumb rolled out of the darkness and came to a stop at the Sith Lord's feet. It emitted no sound, no flash, but a localized, high-frequency EMP burst. Vader's armor sparked. The lights on his chest panel flickered erratically. His respirator gasped, stuttered, and for one terrifying second, stopped. He froze, his lightsaber wavering. It was the opening Diana needed. She swept his legs out from under him with a powerful kick, sending the Dark Lord crashing to the ground. She brought her sword down for a decisive strike. The blade never connected. An invisible wall of pure force energy erupted from Vader, throwing Wonder Woman back as if she'd been hit by a tidal wave. She slammed into the far wall, the breath driven from her lungs. Vader rose, his respirator resuming its rhythmic hiss, though it was now laced with static. He turned his head slowly, his gaze finding Batman in the shadows. The air grew cold. "Clever," Vader said. The word was a death sentence. Batman found himself lifted from the ground by an invisible fist. The pressure was immense, crushing, designed to pulverize bone and rupture organs. He gritted his teeth, his armored suit groaning in protest, its internal systems overloading. This was different from the telekinetic grabs he'd experienced from Earth's metas. This was personal. It was hatred given physical form. "You rely on tricks and shadows," Vader continued, slowly closing his fist. The pressure intensified. "There is no place for shadows in the Emperor's light." Suddenly, a blue blade slammed into Vader's back. Kanan, bleeding but conscious, had retrieved his lightsaber and put every ounce of his strength into a desperate, two-handed thrust. The blade seared into the armor, digging deep into the complex machinery beneath. Vader roared, a sound of pure, undiluted rage that was part machine, part man. The force grip on Batman vanished, and he dropped to the floor, gasping. Vader backhanded Kanan with a telekinetic blow that lifted the Jedi off his feet and sent him skidding down the corridor, where he lay still. The Dark Lord reached over his shoulder, his gloved fingers touching the smoldering gash in his armor. When he spoke again, the mechanical calm was gone, replaced by something ancient and venomous. "You have damaged my suit. For that, you will all die slowly." But the delay had been enough. The Flash returned in a vortex of wind, his mission complete. He took in the scene in a nanosecond. Wonder Woman struggling to her feet, Batman clutching his ribs, Kanan unconscious, and Vader burning with homicidal intent. "Time to go," Flash yelled. He didn't try to fight. He became pure motion. He grabbed Wonder Woman first, depositing her at the entrance to the ventilation shaft in one trip. On the second, he retrieved Batman. On the third, he collected the unconscious Kanan. Vader watched the crimson blur, his anger a palpable heat in the corridor. He reached out with the Force, not for the Flash himself, but for the environment. He tore a massive section of the ceiling loose and hurled it toward the ventilation shaft entrance, aiming to seal them in. A golden lasso snaked out, wrapping around the falling debris. Wonder Woman, braced in the shaft entrance, strained with every muscle, her feet digging into the stone floor. She couldn't stop it, but she slowed it just enough. "Barry, now." The Flash was a blur once more, this time putting his hands against the colossal piece of rubble. He didn't push. He vibrated. His molecules oscillated at a frequency that matched the stone, and for a critical second, the rubble became intangible. It passed through him and crashed harmlessly to the ground behind the team. In that moment of stunned silence, Batman threw a final canister. This one erupted not in EMP, but in a thick, choking, phosphorescent smoke that was utterly opaque to both human and electronic sensors. By the time Vader had cleared the corridor with a wave of his hand, they were gone. On the Ghost, the mood was tense but victorious. The ship shuddered as Hera pushed its engines to the limit, weaving through a storm of laser fire from the TIE fighters. "They're all aboard," she shouted into the comm. "Punching it." In the common area, Mon Mothma was tending to Kanan with a med pack, her hands steady despite the chaos. Wonder Woman stood guard at the boarding ramp, her eyes narrowed as she watched the pursuing TIEs. Batman was at the comms, his voice calm. "Justice League to Green Lantern. Extraction complete. We need an exit." In the space above Centaures, a weakened Green Lantern, leaning heavily on Cyborg, heard the signal. With a final, monumental effort of will, he raised his ring. The emerald light was faint, but it was enough. A shimmering, unstable warp tunnel ripped open in front of the Ghost. Hera didn't hesitate. She flew the ship directly into the glowing green maw. Behind them, the TIE fighters broke off their pursuit, their pilots staring in confusion as the freighter vanished not into the blue streaks of hyperspace, but into a tear of emerald light that snapped shut behind it. The Ghost tumbled out of the warp tunnel and into the space near Yavin 4, its systems protesting the unnatural journey. On the view screen, the massive gas giant and its jungle moon were a welcome sight. Back in the prison corridor on Kessel, Darth Vader stood amidst the wreckage. An Imperial officer approached cautiously, his face pale. "My lord, the prisoners have escaped. The Star Destroyer reports they vanished into some form of energy tunnel." Vader was silent for a long time, his respirator the only sound. He looked down at the scorched mark on his chest plate, then at the groove Wonder Woman's sword had left. He had faced them, tested them, and learned their measure. "The Kessel operation was a failure," the officer ventured. "No," Vader corrected, his voice returning to its measured, mechanical tone. "We have confirmed their commitment to the rebellion. We have identified key capabilities and limitations. The Amazon's weapons can pierce my armor. The Speedster's phasing has a cooldown period. The detective's technology can disrupt my systems." He turned, his cape sweeping around him. "And we have learned that they will risk everything for a single life. That is a far more valuable piece of intelligence than the continued imprisonment of one politician." He began to walk toward his shuttle, the pieces of a new strategy already falling into place in his mind. They were heroes, predictable, moral, constrained. They had power, but they had rules. And rules, in Vader's experience, were made to be broken. "Contact Grand Admiral Thrawn," Vader commanded. "Inform him that Phase 2 of the analysis is complete. It is time to begin designing the countermeasures." The return to Yavin 4 was met with a mixture of triumph and grim assessment. Mon Mothma's safe return was a massive morale victory for the rebellion. Her calm presence and sharp political mind immediately put to work shoring up the Alliance's fractured Senate in exile. But in the war room, surrounded by the ghostly blue light of star charts and damage reports, the Justice League faced the sobering aftermath of their first coordinated strike. The Centaures communications hub is in complete disarray. Cyborg reported, his human eyes showing fatigue despite his mechanical components. Shipping in the Seswena sector is backed up for a standard month. But they were ready for us, Hal. They targeted the infrastructure to try and bury us. Green Lantern nodded, flexing his hand. The ring on his finger glowed with a faint, sickly light. The ring's down to 20%. I need to recharge, but I have no idea if this universe's central power battery even exists for me here. I'm running on reserves. Lothal was a success, Superman stated, his arms crossed. The ion cannon prototype is destroyed. But Thrawn was there. He was observing. He didn't even try to stop me, just asked questions. That is his way, a new voice said. Obi-Wan Kenobi entered the chamber, his robes whispering against the stone floor. Grand Admiral Thrawn does not waste resources on battles he cannot win. He gathers information. He will have learned more from your restraint than from any attack. Batman, who had been silently reviewing the footage from his cowl's recorder the moment Vader had nearly crushed him, finally spoke. He learned plenty from all of us. They know Diana's sword and shield can damage advanced alloys and withstand a lightsaber. They know Barry's phasing has a vulnerability to certain energy types. They know my technology can disrupt their systems, and they know Clark's current limits. He turned to the Man of Steel. Your heat vision didn't recharge as quickly as usual after Lothal, did it? Superman's jaw tightened. No, it didn't. The local stellar radiation is close, but not identical. I'm operating at about 80% efficiency and recovering more slowly. That's what they'll bank on, Batman said, his voice low and urgent. They're adapting. We won't have the element of surprise again. The next time we engage, they will have developed specific counter strategies. The reality of their situation settled over them. They were not invincible gods in this galaxy. They were powerful aliens in a hostile environment, being systematically analyzed by a relentless, galaxy-spanning intelligence apparatus. It was Princess Leia who cut through the tension, her small form radiating a commander's authority. Then we adapt faster. You've given us our greatest political leader back and struck a significant blow to Imperial logistics. The question is, what comes next? We cannot remain on the defensive. It was then that a priority alert flashed across the main holodisplay. A coded, fragmentary transmission, its origin point deep in the outer rim. Cyborg interfaced with the console. It's a rebel beacon, from a cell operating in the Anoat sector. They're claiming they have a defector, a high-level one. The message resolved into the image of a frantic-looking Duros. Repeat, we have secured the defector. Imperial Project. Oculus is a reality. I repeat, Project. Oculus is operational. They're building a... The transmission dissolved into static, followed by a string of coordinates. Project Oculus. Leia murmured, her face pale. Whispers. An Imperial superweapon project even more classified than the Death Star. We thought it was a myth. Oculus, Cyborg repeated, his systems whirring as he cross-referenced the term with the stolen Imperial data. I have fragments. It's not a planet killer, it's a surveillance system. But the scale... His human eye widened. It's a network of stealth probe droids, thousands of them, designed to link up and form a single, galaxy-wide sensor web. If it goes live, there won't be a single hidden base, a single secret meeting, a single rebel transmission they can't monitor. A cold dread filled the room. The Empire's greatest advantage was its size. The Rebellion's was its ability to hide within the cracks. Oculus would eliminate that advantage completely. It was a weapon designed not to destroy worlds, but to strangle hope itself. The defector, Batman pressed. Who is it? Cyborg's face was grim. The data is corrupted, but the security clearance attached to his file? It's immense. This isn't a low-level technician. This is someone who was at the heart of the project. The coordinates are in the Anoat sector, General Dodana said, stroking his beard. It's a mess out there. The Empire has it locked down under something called the Iron Blockade after the Death Star's destruction. Getting in and out is considered impossible. Nothing is impossible, Superman said, but the usual absolute certainty in his voice was tempered by their recent experiences. It's a trap, Batman stated flatly. It's too convenient. A high-level defector with exactly the information we need, appearing right after we've demonstrated our capabilities. Vader and Thrawn are baiting us. Of course it's a trap, Wonder Woman agreed. But what choice do we have? If this weapon is real and we allow it to become operational, the rebellion is finished. We will have saved Mon Mothma only to watch the entire cause be systematically eradicated. The bait is not the defector, Martian Manhunter said, speaking for the first time. He had been deep in a telepathic trance, his mind touching the edges of the transmission. The bait is the hope he represents. The Empire understands that hope is our most powerful weapon, so they dangle it before us, knowing we must seize it, no matter the risk. The decision was made not by a vote, but by a shared, grim understanding. They had to go. The risk was catastrophic, but the cost of inaction was unthinkable. This time, the team would be different. It required subtlety, not force. Infiltration, not assault. Batman would lead. His skills as a detective and infiltrator were paramount. He would be accompanied by Wonder Woman, whose diplomatic prowess and combat skill made her ideal for securing a defector, and Martian Manhunter, whose shape-shifting and telepathy were their best tools for bypassing security. The rest would remain on Yavin 4. Superman was still acclimating, Green Lantern was critically low on power, and the Flash was recovering from the phasing feedback on Kessel. They were the reserve, the emergency response if, or when, everything went wrong. The journey into the Anoat sector was a lesson in Imperial oppression. The Ghost, running silent and dark, slipped past Star Destroyers that hung in the void like watchful predators. The sector was a graveyard of dead freighters and asteroid fields choked with debris, all patrolled by relentless interdictor cruisers designed to pull ships out of hyperspace. The coordinates led to a desolate, mineral-rich planetoid called Geon, its surface scarred by strip mines and patrolled by automated probe droids. The transmission came from deep within the mining complex, Batman said, studying the scanner readouts. Heavy life signs, mostly indentured laborers, and a concentrated Imperial garrison. They're expecting company. Using the Ghost's stealth systems, Hera set them down in a shadowy canyon miles from the main facility. The infiltration team disembarked into the biting cold of the planetoid's night. "This is where I take the lead," John said. His form shimmered, his features melting and reforming into the exact likeness of an Imperial security commander, complete with uniform and rank insignia he had plucked from the mind of a passing patrol. "I can get us through the checkpoints." The ruse worked flawlessly. Commander Tane and his two Stormtrooper escorts, Batman and Wonder Woman in expertly modified armor, marched straight through the main gate, past saluting guards, and deep into the heart of the complex. John's telepathy gently nudged guards to look the other way, bypassed security questions before they were asked, and created a bubble of unquestioned authority around them. They found the defector in a decrepit storage bay, hidden behind crates of mining equipment. He was not what they expected. He was a man in his late 50s with the pallid complexion of someone who spent his life under artificial light, and eyes that held a frantic, intelligent terror. He wore the high-collared uniform of an Imperial science director. "Director Fendel," Wonder Woman said, removing her helmet. "We are friends. We're here to take you to the rebellion." The man stared at them, his hands shaking. "You came. I didn't think anyone would." He clutched a data chip as if it were his own heart. "Oculus. It's monstrous. It uses a twisted form of force-sensitive cloning, creating organic computer hybrids to power the probe droids. It can feel the galaxy, sense intention. It's a perversion of life itself." "We need to move, Director," Batman said. His voice filtered through the Stormtrooper helmet. "Now." As they hurried him back through the corridors, something felt wrong to Batman. It was too easy. The security was just lax enough, the path just clear enough. They were being herded. They reached a central processing chamber, a vast space dominated by a massive matter converter. The door sealed behind them with a definitive boom. From the shadows around the gantry, figures emerged. Not stormtroopers. These were larger, their armor black and angular, their movements eerily synchronized. They carried unique, heavy blaster rifles. Imperial Death Troopers, Batman identified, his voice tight. Special Forces, extreme lethality. But the real threat stepped forward onto the gantry above them. It was not Vader. It was a tall, slender man in an impeccably tailored uniform, his blue skin and glowing red eyes marking him as Chiss. "Grand Admiral Thrawn," Wonder Woman breathed, raising her shield. Thrawn clasped his hands behind his back, his expression one of academic curiosity. "Director Fendel, your betrayal was, I admit, a variable I had not anticipated. But your predictability in contacting the rebellion was not." His gaze swept over the disguised League. "And you must be the Dimensional Travelers, the Justice League. Your performance on Lothal and Kessel was instructive." John dropped his disguise, returning to his Martian form. "You cannot hold us here, Admiral." "I have no intention of holding you," Thrawn replied calmly. "I intend to study you, to understand the art of your being. Your actions paint a vivid picture. The Amazonian warrior, bound by a code of honor. The detective, reliant on technology and fear. The shapeshifter, a creature of mind and form." He gestured slightly. The Death Troopers opened fire. But these were not normal blaster bolts. The projectiles were slower, glowing with a peculiar orange energy. Wonder Woman deflected the first shot with her shield. The impact wasn't explosive, it was adhesive. A net of crackling orange energy erupted from the point of impact, wrapping around her shield and arm, hardening instantly into a rock-like substance. She cried out, her arm pinned, the weight immense. Batman threw a batarang, but a Death Trooper shot it mid-air. The same orange energy encasing it and sending it clattering to the floor. John attempted to phase, but one of the projectiles passed through his chest as he began to shift. He screamed, a sound of pure agony, and solidified. The orange energy crystallizing around his torso, disrupting his molecular control. "They are ionite caster rounds," Thrawn explained, as if lecturing at an academy. "A specialized load designed to disrupt energy fields, and as we have discovered, certain exotic biological functions. We learned from your encounter with Lord Vader." Wonder Woman strained against the rock-like substance, but it held fast. Batman was pinned against a wall by another shot, the hardening foam locking his armor in place. John was on his knees, his telepathic cries of pain echoing in the minds of his teammates. Thrawn walked down to where Director Fendel was cowering. "The Oculus project is, of course, real, and you have just delivered its chief architect back to us. For that, you have my thanks." He took the data chip from the terrified man's hand. "You won't get away with this," Wonder Woman snarled. Thrawn looked at her, his red eyes utterly devoid of malice, only calculation. "I already have. The trap was not for capturing you. It was for testing the countermeasures. And they performed admirably." He turned to leave, his death troopers forming a perimeter around him and the sobbing director. "Your strength is your greatest weakness," Thrawn said, pausing at the door. "You are heroes. You will always come to the rescue, and we will always be waiting." The door sealed, leaving the 3 members of the Justice League trapped and neutralized, as the Grand Admiral departed with the very secret they had come to uncover. For the first time, the Empire had not just fought them to a standstill. It had defeated them. The silence in the processing chamber was absolute, broken only by the hum of the matter converter and the faint, strained breathing of the captured Leaguers. The orange, rock-like substance encasing Wonder Woman's arm and shield, pinning Batman to the wall and crippling Martian Manhunter, was not merely physical. It felt dead, a void in the Force, a static in the air that resisted their every effort. "Diana!" Batman's voice was tight, filtered through his helmet. He was testing his restraints with microscopic movements, finding no give. "Can you break free?" Wonder Woman strained, the muscles in her shoulder and back corded with the effort. The Amazonian strength that could topple buildings met an immovable object. The adhesive substance groaned but did not crack. "No, it is like trying to lift the world itself. My strength is muted." John was the worst off. He was on his knees, head bowed, his form flickering uncontrollably between his Martian shape and a half-dozen others. A stormtrooper, Thrawn, a bird, a cloud of mist. Each shift was accompanied by a gasp of pain. "The energy. It disrupts my cellular cohesion. I cannot hold form, I cannot phase. It is a cage designed specifically for me." Batman's mind raced, discarding one plan after another. Explosives would be contained by the adhesive and likely kill them. His armor's built-in tools were inaccessible. They were utterly neutralized. Thrawn's analysis had been terrifyingly precise. "He didn't take us prisoner," Batman realized aloud, his voice cold. "He's leaving us here. This is another test, to see how we escape, to add more data to his profile." On the Ghost, orbiting silently in the darkness of a nearby asteroid field, the mood had turned to ice. They had lost the comm signal the moment the chamber door sealed. "They're not responding," Hera said, her voice strained. She'd run every scan, every passive sensor sweep. Life signs are still there, but they're contained. I'm reading that strange energy signature again, the one from the specialized blaster fire. Superman stood behind her, his fists clenched. His X-ray vision was useless against the dense ore of the planetoid and the chamber's thick shielding. "I'm going in." "Clark, no," Green Lantern said, though the protest sounded weak even to him. He lay on a cot, his ring hand resting on his chest. The emerald light was a faint, dying pulse. "It's exactly what they want. They've built a trap for each of us. They'll have a kryptonite equivalent ready for you." "They don't have kryptonite," Superman retorted, his jaw set. "They have a galaxy of resources and a genius admiral who knows you're coming." Hal pushed himself up on an elbow. "They'll have something. Red sun radiation, magic, a psychic weapon John couldn't shield you from. You go in there blind, and you'll end up in a cage next to them." "So what's your plan, Hal?" Superman's voice was uncharacteristically sharp. Let them rot while your ring recharges at a glacial pace? My plan, said a new voice, is to stop thinking like a hammer. Everyone turned. The Flash was standing in the doorway, no longer leaning against it for support. His suit was still scorched from the lightsaber feedback, but his eyes were clear, focused. He'd been running calculations in his head at super speed. Barry? Superman asked. Thrawn thinks in patterns, in art, in psychology. The Flash began pacing, a crimson blur that left after images in the cramped cockpit. He set a trap for a rescue team. He expects the big, powerful response. He expects you, Clark, or a desperate strike from the rebels. He's prepared for force. He stopped, vibrating to a halt in front of them. He's not prepared for a nuisance. A slow, grim smile spread across Green Lantern's face. Oh, I like this. My connection to the Speed Force is still shaky, Barry admitted. I can't phase through walls right now. I can't vibrate through that adhesive gunk. But I can still run circles around every Imperial in that complex without them ever knowing I was there. He looked at Cyborg. Victor, you hacked a Star Destroyer's network from a planet's surface. Can you hack a local comms tower from orbit? Cyborg's eye lit up. To do what? To make a delivery, the Flash said. A very, very fast one. Inside the chamber, Batman had exhausted 17 separate contingency plans when a new sound reached his enhanced auditory sensors. A faint, high-pitched whine growing rapidly closer. It was the sound of air being displaced at impossible speeds. A small cylindrical object, no larger than a ration bar, shot through a narrow ventilation shaft high on the wall. It struck the floor in the center of the room with a clink and skidded to a stop. A holographic image of the Flash, miniature and blue, projected from it. Don't move, folks, the tiny Barry Allen said with a grin. Help is coming. Well, actually, the help is already here. Just really, really small. The cylinder split open. A cloud of nanites, developed by Batman and Cyborg for microscopic forensic analysis, spilled out. They weren't designed for this, but the Flash had given them a new, simple command. Consume the orange adhesive. The nanites, each no larger than a dust mote, swarmed over the rock-like substance encasing the League. They didn't attack it with force. They analyzed its molecular structure at a quantum level and began disassembling it, atom by atom. It was a painstakingly slow process for anyone else, but to the trapped Leaguers, they watched as the substance began to visibly, silently evaporate. It took 90 seconds. Wonder Woman's arm came free first. She flexed it, the feeling returning in a painful rush. Next, Batman pulled himself from the wall, the nanites having eaten through the bonds. Finally, John slowly rose to his feet, his form stabilizing as the disruptive field around him dissolved. A nanite solution, Batman said, a note of professional respect in his voice. Ingenious. Thrawn prepared for our powers. He didn't prepare for our technology being used in a way he hadn't observed. The door, Wonder Woman said, hefting her shield. The adhesive was gone from it as well. No, Batman said, holding up a hand. He pointed to the now empty cylinder. A second, smaller hologram activated. It was a schematic of the complex, with a single, blinking path leading out. Barry's not done. He's running reconnaissance. He's found a path, and he's found something else. The hologram zoomed in on a hangar bay. The Imperial shuttle Thrawn had arrived in was being prepped for departure, and being loaded under heavy guard was a familiar figure. Director Fendel, along with several large data crates. He's leaving with the Director and the Oculus data, Wonder Woman realized. We can't let that shuttle reach orbit, John said, his voice still weak but firm. "We won't," Batman said. "We follow Barry's path. We don't engage, we intercept." The route the Flash had mapped was a masterpiece of misdirection. Service tunnels, waste conduits, and ventilation shafts, all bypassing the main Imperial patrols. They moved like ghosts, following the trail of disoriented guards who had felt a sudden gust of wind moments before. They reached the hangar bay, concealed in the shadows of a gantry overlooking the landing pad. Thrawn's shuttle, a sleek, Lambda-class vessel, was powering up its engines. Director Fendel was being escorted up the ramp by 2 Death Troopers. "We're out of time," Wonder Woman whispered. "No, we're not," Batman said. He nodded toward the shuttle's landing struts. There, almost invisible in the shimmer of the engine heat, was a blur of crimson. The Flash was systematically removing the rivets from one of the primary hydraulic systems in the landing gear. On the ramp, Thrawn paused, his head tilting as if listening to a faint, discordant note in a symphony. His red eyes scanned the hangar, missing nothing. The Death Trooper commander approached him. "All is secure, Admiral. The prisoners remain contained." Thrawn did not respond immediately. His gaze swept the shadows where the League was hidden, then moved to his shuttle. He saw nothing. But his intuition, his understanding of art and pattern, screamed a warning. "Delay the launch," Thrawn commanded. "Conduct a Level 5 diagnostic on all flight systems." It was too late. With a final critical rivet removed, the hydraulic line on the landing strut burst. The shuttle lurched violently, its ramp grinding against the landing pads with a shriek of metal. Alarms blared across the hangar. In the chaos, the Flash became a tornado. He didn't attack the troops. He snatched the data crates from the hands of the stunned technicians, piling them in a stack near the League's position. On his final pass, he didn't take Director Fendel. He simply cut the man's bindings and gave him a gentle shove toward the shadows. Fendel stumbled, confused, right into Batman's waiting grasp. "Time to go," Batman said. Thrawn stood amidst the chaos, his face an impassive mask. He watched the data crates vanish. He watched the defector disappear into the darkness. He did not give chase. He simply observed, storing every detail. The Justice League retreated, following the Flash's pre-mapped escape route, the stolen data in hand and the defector in tow. They had not defeated Thrawn in battle. They had not smashed his forces. They had outmaneuvered him. They had used speed and subtlety instead of overwhelming power. They had stolen his prize from under his nose. As the Ghost jumped to hyperspace, leaving Guion behind, the mood was not one of victory, but of grim realization. They had escaped. They had even won a tactical victory. But back in the hangar, Grand Admiral Thrawn stood beside his crippled shuttle, a single, discarded nanite cylinder held delicately in his gloved hand. He examined it under the light, his mind already working, adapting, refining his profile. He spoke aloud to the empty hangar, his voice calm. A new brushstroke on the canvas. The speedster is not merely a weapon, he is a strategist, and they are learning. He closed his hand around the cylinder. The lesson is not over. The Ghost's common room felt like a command center under siege. The stolen Oculus data crystals were spread across the holotable, their contents spilling out in a dizzying array of schematics, deployment schedules, and chillingly detailed technical readouts. Director Fendel, wrapped in a thermal blanket and clutching a mug of stim tea, looked like a man who had stared into the abyss and found it staring back with glowing red eyes. The Oculus network is not a single weapon, Fendel explained, his voice trembling with a mixture of exhaustion and residual terror. It is a distributed consciousness. Each probe droid contains a cloned fragment of a Force-sensitive being, their midi-chlorians used as a biological processing unit. When linked, they don't just share data. They think as one. They can predict patterns, sense emotional intent, feel the ebb and flow of dissent across the galaxy. It is a web designed to feel the heartbeat of the rebellion and stop it. The implications were even worse than they had feared. This wasn't just surveillance. It was precognitive oppression. And the central nexus? Batman pressed, his eyes fixed on the data. The brain that coordinates this network? Fendel pointed a shaking finger at a schematic of a massive, ring-shaped space station, unlike any Imperial design they had seen. The Citadel of Vision. It's mobile, hidden in the deep core. It's where the primary consciousness resides. A cloned copy of the most powerful psychic mind the Empire could acquire. He swallowed hard. They call the consciousness the Watcher. Destroy the Citadel, and the network goes blind. Superman studied the schematics, his face grim. The station's defenses were staggering. Multiple shield generators, a garrison of thousands, and a firepower rating that dwarfed a Star Destroyers. A direct assault is suicide, even for us. Then we don't assault it, a new voice said, weak but determined. All eyes turned to Green Lantern. Hal Jordan was standing in the doorway, leaning heavily on the frame. His face was pale, drenched in sweat, but his ring glowed with a steady, determined green light. It was no longer the faint pulse of before, but the clear, strong emerald of a lantern at full power. "Hal," Superman said, a note of warning in his tone. "You're in no condition." "The condition," Hal interrupted, pushing off the doorframe and standing under his own power, "is that the Empire is about to turn the entire galaxy into a panopticon. I tapped into the local power source. It's not the central battery, but this galaxy has its own wellspring of willpower. The rebellion itself. I channeled it. I'm back." He held up his ring, and "I've got a plan." The plan was as audacious as it was desperate. It relied on every member of the League functioning at their peak and exploiting the one vulnerability Fendel had revealed: the network's reliance on a single, centralized consciousness. "The Citadel is the brain," Hal explained, projecting a holographic battle plan. "But the probe droids are the senses. They're already being deployed. We can't stop the deployment, but we can overload the brain with too much input." He looked at the Flash. "Barry, your job is to create ghosts. I'll give you a list of 100 key rebel sympathizer cells. You visit every one, leaving a false data trail, a whisper of activity. You make it look like the rebellion is erupting everywhere at once." He turned to Cyborg. "Victor, you hack the Imperial HoloNet. You create phantom fleets, fake transmissions, a whole shadow war happening in the data streams. Flood the Oculus with contradictory information." Finally, he looked at the rest of the team. "While the Watcher is distracted, trying to process a galaxy on fire, we hit the Citadel, not to destroy it, to replace its brain." Wonder Woman's eyes widened in understanding. "John?" "Exactly," Hal said. "While the Watcher is overwhelmed, John phases into the central core. He doesn't destroy the cloned consciousness, he supplants it. He becomes the Watcher. And the first command he gives the Oculus network is to forget the rebellion ever existed." The plan was a masterpiece of misdirection, a symphony of their unique abilities played against the Empire's overwhelming force. But the risks were astronomical. "The moment we begin, the Emperor will know," Obi-Wan Kenobi cautioned. "He will feel the disturbance in the Force. He will send Vader. He may come himself. Then we'll be ready," Superman said. his voice resolute. For the first time since arriving in this galaxy, he felt the familiar certainty of a clear mission, a defined enemy, and a path to victory that didn't involve collapsing a civilization. The next 48 hours were a blur of coordinated chaos across the galaxy. The Flash became a legend, a ghost story told in 100 different star systems. On Sullust, Stormtroopers would burst into a safe house to find it empty, the calf still warm. On Corellia, security footage would show a blur of red and lightning near a key Imperial logistics center. On Chandrila, a governor known for his Imperial loyalty would suddenly resign, citing a change of heart after a conversation he couldn't quite remember. Barry Allen was sowing beautiful, chaotic confusion at the speed of light. Cyborg sat plugged directly into the ghost systems, his mind merged with the galactic network. He created entire phantom fleets maneuvering in the Outer Rim, fabricated Senate-level diplomatic scandals, and even generated a false sighting of a second Death Stars being constructed. The Imperial intelligence apparatus began to choke on the noise, and high above Yavin 4, the Justice League made their final preparations. The plan was in motion, the trap was set. Now came the hardest part, waiting for the Empire to take the bait. They didn't have to wait long. An alarm blared on the Ghost's console. Hera's hands flew across the controls. Massive hyperspace signature incoming. It's the Executor. Through the viewport, space itself tore open. Not the localized rift of their arrival, but a calculated, violent rending of reality. From the blue-white maw of hyperspace, a dagger of pure darkness emerged. The Super Star Destroyer Executor, Darth Vader's personal command ship, was a city of weapons and armor. Its scale so vast, it seemed to blot out the stars themselves. It was flanked by a full complement of Star Destroyers, their formations perfect, their intent unmistakable. They had come to Yavin 4. The Empire was done playing games. All ships, battle stations. General Dodonna's voice crackled over the rebel comms. The few capital ships the Alliance possessed, frigates and cruisers held together by hope and welding torches, moved to intercept, their fighter screens of X-Wings and Y-Wings scrambling to meet the swarms of TIE fighters now pouring from the Imperial fleet. It was a massacre in the making. "This is it," Superman said, his cape billowing as he stood at the boarding ramp. "Hal, Diana, John, you're with me. We board the Executor. We draw Vader out, keep him occupied while Barry and Victor do their work. Bruce, your command and control." Batman gave a sharp nod. "The Citadel's coordinates are loaded. The moment John gives the signal, we jump." The Justice League launched themselves into the battle. It was a scene of apocalyptic beauty and terror. Green energy from Hal's ring carved through squadrons of TIE fighters. Wonder Woman deflected turbolaser fire meant for rebel cruisers. Superman flew through the heart of the Imperial formation, drawing fire away from the outgunned rebel fleet. And at the center of it all, the Executor loomed, an unassailable fortress. They breached the hangar bay, fighting their way through legions of stormtroopers. Their goal was not subtlety now. It was spectacle. They needed Vader's complete and utter attention. They found him in the main hangar, waiting for them. He stood alone, his lightsaber already ignited, the red blade casting a bloody glow on the polished deck. Around him, the bodies of rebel troopers from a previous, failed boarding action lay scattered. "You have forced my hand." Vader's voice boomed over the sounds of distant battle. "The Emperor grows impatient. Your disruption ends now." He didn't wait for a response. He thrust out his hand, and the very metal of the hangar deck tore itself upward. becoming a storm of shrapnel aimed at them. Green Lantern met it with a massive construct wall, but the impact drove him to his knees. "The ring is strong, Lantern," Vader observed, advancing. "But your will is untested against true darkness." Wonder Woman charged, her battle cry echoing through the cavernous space. She and Vader became a whirlwind of clashing energy, red plasma against divine silver. She was faster, but his connection to the Force gave him an edge in precognition, allowing him to parry blows that should have been impossible to block. Superman engaged him head-on, his invulnerable fists meeting the lightsaber. Each impact was a thunderclap. He grabbed Vader's wrist, preventing him from using telekinesis, forcing a contest of pure physical strength. Vader's armor groaned in protest, but he held, his cybernetic limbs exerting impossible force. "You fight for a lost cause, Kryptonian," Vader snarled, his faceplate inches from Superman's. "I fight for life," Superman grunted back, his eyes beginning to glow. "Something you gave up on long ago." While the three powerhouses occupied Vader, Martian Manhunter did his work. He phased through the deck, heading for the bridge. His mission was to disable the Executor's command and control, to turn Vader's own sword against him. On the bridge, Admiral Piet watched the sensor displays with growing horror. "My lord, we're detecting anomalous data streams across the entire galaxy. Rebel activity is being reported in 1,000 systems simultaneously. Our targeting computers cannot establish priority." Vader, locked in combat, heard the report through his comlink. A cold fury burned through him. This was the distraction. The real attack was elsewhere. He disengaged from Superman with a powerful force push that sent the Man of Steel sliding backward. He reached out with his mind, past the chaos of the battle, past the false signals, searching for the true threat. And he found it. A single small freighter, the Ghost, had broken away from the battle and was making a jump to hyperspace on a trajectory that led to one place only: the deep core. "The Citadel," Vader breathed, his rage becoming a physical chill in the air. He had been outmaneuvered. "Piet, all power to engines. Plot a course to intercept that ship." But it was too late. The Ghost vanished into the blue streak of hyperspace. Vader stood amidst the wreckage of his hangar bay, his enemies still before him. He had lost, not the battle in front of him, but the war for information. The Justice League had looked at his unstoppable fleet and his invincible person, and they had simply gone around him. He turned his masked gaze back to Superman, Wonder Woman, and Green Lantern. The air crackled with dark side energy. "You have won a moment," Vader said, his voice dropping to a deadly whisper. "But you have also revealed your final trick. There will be no more surprises." He raised his lightsaber. The real fight, he knew, was just beginning. The bridge of the Executor was a tomb of silent tension. The view screen showed the retreating forms of the Justice League, disengaging from the battle now that their true objective was complete. The rebel fleet, battered but not broken, was scattering into hyperspace, living to fight another day. They had not won the battle, but they had achieved something far more important. They had stolen the initiative. Darth Vader stood with his back to his crew, his black cape a curtain of darkness against the star-dusted void. His respirator was the only sound, a rhythmic counterpoint to the frantic, silent activity of the bridge officers who dared not speak. The Dark Lord's fury was a cold, palpable force that made the air thin and the lights flicker. "The Ghost's trajectory confirms it, my lord," Admiral Piet finally ventured, his voice carefully neutral. "They are headed for the deep core, for the Citadel." Vader did not turn. The Oculus network status? The data stream is chaotic. We are receiving thousands of simultaneous threat alerts. Our analysts cannot distinguish signal from noise. The network is experiencing a systemic overload. Vader's fist clenched. They had not merely attacked his fleet. They had attacked his intelligence, his sight. They had blinded the Empire, if only temporarily. The brilliance of the maneuver was an insult that burned hotter than any lightsaber. Recall all fleets from pursuit of the rebel remnants, Vader commanded, his voice slicing through the tension. Set course for the Citadel, maximum speed. My lord? Piet could not hide his confusion. The rebellion is a symptom, Vader interrupted, finally turning. The black lenses of his mask seemed to bore into the Admiral's soul. These dimensional interlopers are the disease. They think in ways we do not. They fight a war of ideas, not just territory. They must be eradicated before their infection spreads. As the massive Superstar Destroyer pivoted and began its journey into the most fortified region of Imperial space, Vader retreated to his meditation chamber. The isolation was absolute, the darkness a comfort. He reached out through the Force, past the false echoes and phantom signals, seeking the calm, malevolent presence that governed the galaxy. Master, he thought, the word of formality, a habit of decades. The presence responded not as a voice, but as an impression of infinite patience and bottomless cunning. Palpatine had felt it all. The failed trap on Gyan, the humiliation at Yavin, the clever, multi-layered assault on his grand design. They are more creative than I anticipated. The Emperor's thought came, laced with a dark amusement that was more terrifying than anger. The Kryptonians' power, the Amazons' defiance, the Martians' fluidity. They are a fascinating new pigment on the canvas. They are a threat, Vader countered, his thought a spike of impatience. Their methods are unpredictable. They do not respect the hierarchy of power. Precisely, Palpatine's essence purred. And that is why they must be broken, not merely destroyed. I have seen the potential futures, my apprentice. In some, they become useful tools. In others, they become a flame that ignites a rebellion capable of truly challenging us. We must guide them toward the former. A new set of coordinates, deeply encrypted and protected by Sith sorcery, bloomed in Vader's mind. It was not the location of the Citadel. The Oculus project, while elegant, was always a secondary measure, the Emperor conveyed. I have a task for you, Lord Vader. Let the Justice League have their small victory. Let them believe they have saved the day. There is a world in the unknown regions, a place strong in the dark side. Go there. Await my signal. The true lesson for these heroes is about to begin. The connection severed, leaving Vader alone with his orders. The Emperor saw moves ahead that he did not. The game was far from over. It was merely entering a new, more devastating phase. Aboard the Ghost, emerging from hyperspace in the silent, star-packed heart of the deep core, the mood was the opposite. They had done it. Before them hung the Citadel of Vision, a stark obsidian ring set against the fiery backdrop of a nebula. But something was wrong. Its defensive shields were down, its weapon batteries were silent. No TIE fighters swarmed to meet them. I'm not reading any significant power signatures, Cyborg reported, his voice puzzled. Life signs are minimal. It's like they evacuated. A trap? Wonder Woman asked, her hand on her sword. No, Martian Manhunter said, his eyes closed in concentration. I can feel it. The Watcher. It is afraid. It is alone. The Empire has abandoned it. With cautious precision, the Ghost docked in an empty hangar bay. The station was a ghost ship, its corridors empty, its systems on low power. They found the central chamber without resistance. There, in a vat of glowing blue nutrient fluid, floated a horrifying sight. A cloned, force-sensitive brain, pulsing with stolen energy, connected to a galaxy-spanning network by a web of wires and tubes. This was the Watcher. It was terrified. John could feel its simple, cloned consciousness radiating pure animal fear. The Empire had created it, used it, and now, seeing it compromised, had left it to die. "It's a child," John whispered, his heart aching with pity. A child born only to be a weapon. He didn't need to fight it. He simply reached out with his telepathy, soothing the frightened mind. He showed it peace, silence, rest. With a final, grateful psychic sigh, the Watcher's consciousness willingly dissolved, surrendering its burden to the Martian. John Johns became the new Watcher. For a moment, he was everywhere. He felt the thousands of probe droids as extensions of his own body, felt the flow of information from a million worlds. He saw the Empire not as a government, but as a cancer of fear and control. He saw the rebellion as tiny, brave points of light in an overwhelming darkness. And he gave his first command: forget. Across the galaxy, every Oculus probe droid powered down its primary sensors. They would continue to transmit mundane data, weather patterns, shipping manifests. But the deep-level psychic surveillance, the search for rebellion and dissent, ceased. The invisible web that was tightening around the galaxy's throat suddenly went slack. It was over. They had won. Weeks later, on Yavin 4th, the atmosphere was one of hard-won celebration. The Justice League stood with the Rebel High Command on the steps of the Great Temple, watching as Mon Mothma addressed a gathering of pilots, soldiers, and freed political prisoners. Hope, tangible and powerful, filled the air. "We have struck a blow that will echo through the stars," Mon Mothma declared, her voice strong. "We have proven that the Empire is not invincible. And we have new allies, champions from beyond the stars, who have reminded us what we are fighting for." The cheers were deafening. But the League felt the weight of the cost. They had seen the scale of the oppression. They had felt the dark power of the Emperor. This was not a war that would be won with a single battle. "We've given them a chance," Superman said, watching the hopeful faces in the crowd. "But this is their fight. We can't win it for them." "No," Batman agreed, his gaze sweeping the jungle horizon. "But we can help them win it themselves. We've shown them how, not with overwhelming power, but with intelligence, with speed, with heart." The League had found their role. They were not the army of the rebellion. They were its scalpel, its shield, its guiding light. They would continue to train rebel operatives, provide strategic oversight, and strike at key Imperial targets too hardened for the Alliance to touch. They were integrating, becoming part of the galaxy's fabric. Superman's cells had fully adapted, his powers restored under the twin suns of Tatooine. Green Lantern's ring drew strength from the unwavering will of the rebellion. The Flash had mapped hyperspace routes the Empire couldn't comprehend. They were no longer outsiders. They were guardians of a new hope. As the ceremony ended, Princess Leia approached them, a rare, genuine smile on her face. "The galaxy will never be the same because of what you did. You gave us back our future." Superman smiled back. "You were always going to take it back, Princess. We just helped clear the path." That night, as the twin moons rose over the jungle, the Justice League looked out at the galaxy they had sworn to protect. It was vast, it was wounded, but it was alive with possibility. The Empire was wounded, but not defeated. The Emperor was out there, plotting his next move. Darth Vader was waiting in the shadows. But for the first time since their arrival, they felt not like lost travelers, but like they were exactly where they were meant to be. The victory on Yavin 4 was not an end, but a beginning. A seismic shift in the galactic balance of power. The Justice League's intervention had irrevocably altered the trajectory of the conflict. By blinding the Oculus, they had not merely disabled a weapon, they had restored the essential oxygen of rebellion. Secrecy. Hidden cells could breathe again, supply lines reformed in the shadows, and the spark of defiance, once threatened with extinction, now burned brighter than ever. The League's true impact, however, lay not in the battles they won, but in the paradigm they introduced. They had shown the rebellion that the Empire's greatest weakness was not its military might, but its inflexible, hierarchical thinking. The Alliance learned to fight a war of agility and intellect. Using misdirection and precision strikes, the very hallmarks of Earth's finest heroes, Superman became a symbol of hope that even the Empire's propaganda could not tarnish. Batman's tactical genius shaped a new generation of rebel Spec Ops commanders. Wonder Woman's unwavering moral code became a guiding principle, ensuring the rebellion fought for justice, not merely victory. Yet, in the dark silence of the unknown regions, on a world where the very stones whispered with ancient malice, Darth Vader waited. His defeat had not weakened him. It had refined his purpose. He now understood his enemies not as obstacles, but as a complex equation to be solved. And in the heart of Coruscant, deep within the Imperial Palace, Emperor Palpatine watched it all with a serpent's smile. The arrival of these powerful moral beings was not a crisis, but an opportunity. A chance to corrupt something truly pure and, in doing so, demonstrate the absolute supremacy of the dark side. The first act was over. The next, far more dangerous game was about to begin. The Justice League had given the galaxy a new hope, but they had also earned the full, focused attention of a Sith Lord who had waited 1,000 years for his reign. The war for the soul of the galaxy had just entered a new, more volatile phase.